Chapter 145. With a flash of the sword light, a wisp of cloud appeared out of thin air and gathered rapidly. With a flash of the sword light, the wisps of cloud converged in the blink of an eye. A 3-meter-wide white cloud appeared, rolling over and over. Chu-Mu flicked his wrist and the fake clear wind sword vibrated. The tip of the sword vibrated rapidly at a speed that was difficult to be seen by the naked eye. The 3-meter-wide white cloud suddenly stopped and then shattered. Streaks of cloud-type sword chi shot out in all directions, making the sharp sound of the air being torn apart. It made one's scalp tingle. Sheathing the sword, Chu-Mu had a faint smile on his face. As expected, actual combat is the best way to cultivate. Although the Cloud Sea swordsmanship and the cloud-breaking swordsmanship were still quite far away from perfection, Chu-Mu had found another way to grasp the essence of them. The battle with the dozen or so swordsmen who came to challenge him allowed Chu-Mu to grasp the alternating connection and fusion between the Cloud Sea swordsmanship and the cloud-breaking swordsmanship. It was quite difficult to switch between different swordsmanship, even if they were of the same type. It was even more difficult to perform alternating swordsmanship as one wished. After all, different swordsmanships had their own characteristics, styles, and quintessence. It was almost impossible to integrate the differences, but Chu-Mu did it. Today was the 10th day since Chu-Mu defeated the dozen or so swordsmen who challenged him. Ever since those people were defeated, they felt that they had lost all face and did not dare to come to the Qingfeng courtyard to make a scene. The Qingfeng courtyard finally had a temporary peace. When Luo Yufeng and the others saw that Chu-Mu was able to defeat the dozen or so swordsmen, they were deeply stimulated. They worked even harder in their cultivation, squeezing out all the time they could to devote to endless cultivation. After 10 days of comprehension and cultivation, Chu-Mu was finally able to connect the Cloud Sea sword technique and Cloud Shattering sword technique as he wished. There wasn't the slightest bit of delay. However, he knew that this was only the first step. The following steps were even more important. After returning to his pavilion, a thought suddenly popped up in Chu-Mu's mind. It seemed that there was a high-rank sword technique, a super-rank sword technique, and a high-rank sword technique in his spatial bracelet. Even though he had to cultivate the brutal dark blood sword chi to master them, this did not stop Chu-Mu from studying them. It would be best if he could extract the useful parts from them and use them for himself. This was because if Chu-Mu wanted to upgrade the Cloud Shock Kill to a high-grade sword skill, and a powerful one at that, he would definitely need more inspiration. After returning to his pavilion, he took out 3 books from his space bracelet and flipped through them one by one. The Dark Blood Sword Art, Bloody Slaughter Sword Art, and Dark Blood Sword Burst were all related to blood. Theoretically speaking, as long as one cultivated a blood elemental sword chi technique, they would be able to cultivate these 2 sword arts and 1 sword skill. However, in order to unleash their full power, one had to cultivate the Dark Blood Sword chi technique. After carefully reading through them, Chu-Mu put away the Dark Blood Sword Art and Bloody Slaughter Sword Art. This was because Chu-Mu's intuition told him that these 2 sword arts would not be of much help to him in upgrading the Cloud Shock Kill. On the contrary, the advanced sword skill, Dark Blood Sword Explosion, gave Chu-Mu a glimmer of hope. Both the Dark Blood Sword Art and the Bloody Slaughter Sword Art had their own killing move. The Dark Blood Sword Explosion was stronger than the Dark Blood Sword Art's killing move, but it was far weaker than the Bloody Slaughter Sword Art's killing move. After all, the difference between the advanced level and the super level was very obvious. After reading the Dark Blood Sword Explosion again, he carefully comprehended it and gradually entered a state of comprehension based on his feelings. In the backyard of the Qingfeng courtyard, Chu-Mu was cultivating the Cloud Sea sword art and the Cloud Shattering sword art. These 2 incomplete advanced sword arts were performed naturally by Chu-Mu. They were interconnected and there was no flaw to be found. Li Yi and the others stopped cultivating and stood aside to watch. They felt tormented. Their torment wasn't sadness, but a unique feeling that was a mixture of shock and motivation. Thinking back to when they were still bitterly training one sword technique, Chu Mu had already reached the stage where he could connect and even merge two-sword technique. Countless clouds revolved around the surroundings, practically filling half of the back courtyard. It enveloped a radius of 10 to 20 meters. Chu Mu waved his sword in the middle of the clouds. Cold light overlapped, and his footsteps were disorderly. His figure leaped and flipped, constantly changing. Cracking sounds were constantly heard. They were not loud, but they were ear-piercing. These cracking sounds made the clouds surge even more violently. When these slight cracking sounds fell into the ears of Luo Yufeng and the others, their faces changed unconsciously. The corners of their eyes twitched slightly, and their scalps went numb. Previously, they had tried it out of curiosity. That feeling made them feel very uncomfortable. It was as if they were in a vast sea of clouds and could not see anything. Moreover, the sea of clouds around them was constantly cracking and exploding. The explosions made their blood and sword chi turbulent, making it difficult for them to control. They did not want to experience that feeling of not being able to control themselves a second time. From Chu Mu's words, they guessed that Chu Mu was currently creating a sword art. This made them even more surprised. Creating a sword art was not so easy. Li Yi and the other two had comprehended the Qingfeng sword style, and in the end, only Yuan Wenhua had barely comprehended an intermediate sword art. It still needed a few months to perfect it. Now Chu Mu was going to create a sword art. Looking at the situation, it did not seem to be a low or intermediate sword art. How could they not be surprised? In the entire Sword Academy, who would dare to say that they had created a sword art? On second thought, such an awesome Chu Mu was their junior brother. Although having such a junior brother gave them a lot of pressure, from another point of view, it also gave them a lot of faith. Just as Luo Yufeng and the others were thinking, Chu Mu finished cultivating and sheathed his sword. However, he stood motionless in place. His eyes were deep, as if he was thinking about something. Time passed little by little. The air in the backyard seemed to be about to solidify. Luo Yufeng and the others frowned slightly, feeling a little breathless. Suddenly, they saw a dazzling light burst out in front of their eyes. Then, they heard the ear-piercing sound of metal rubbing against each other. Their minds went blank in an instant. In front of them, only a white cloud appeared. In an instant, it shattered and was annihilated. The whole process was very short, just in the blink of an eye. Moreover, streaks of white cloud sword chi shot out in all directions, making an incomparably sharp sound. The momentum was terrifying. In the eyes of Luo Yufeng and the others, this move was extremely powerful. If they were not protected by the sword chi armor, once they were hit, they would definitely die. Even if they were protected by the sword chi armor, they would most likely be injured. However, Chu Mu frowned slightly. He was not satisfied. In his eyes, the feeling when he first attacked was very good. However, after the explosion, the white cloud sword chi was not strong enough. Moreover, it did not have enough momentum. In terms of power, it was much more powerful than the shocking cloud kill, but it still did not reach the level of an advanced sword art. He sheathed his sword again and fell into deep thought. After a while, he drew his sword again and slashed out. This repeated a few times. Although the sword art he used was more powerful, it was still limited to the level of an intermediate sword art. There was always a layer of barrier that could not be broken through. Looks like the Cloud Sea sword art and the Cloud Shattering sword art are both incomplete advanced sword art. It's not enough. If only one of them was an advanced sword art, maybe it would be enough, Chu Mu thought to himself. Then, an idea flashed through his mind: dark blood sword explosion. Advanced sword arts were not so easy to comprehend. Chu Mu spent a total of 10 days to comprehend the dark blood sword explosion. However, because of the sword chi, he did not cultivate it. Although he had comprehended it, he still had no idea how to use it. At this moment, Chu Mu suddenly had an idea. Strictly speaking, the dark blood sword explosion could be divided into two parts: dark blood and sword explosion. Dark blood referred to the unique power of the dark blood sword chi as a prerequisite. Sword explosion was the release of this unique power. Although Chu Mu did not cultivate it, he could feel the terrifying power after comprehending it. I can't cultivate dark blood, but sword explosion, I can try to integrate it into the shocking cloud kill. In this way, the power will definitely increase by a lot. However, at that time, it will not be suitable to call it the shocking cloud kill. After I master it, I will think of a new name, Chu Mu thought to himself. This was not something that could be done overnight. Chu Mu immediately said goodbye to Luo Yufeng and the others and left the backyard to return to the pavilion. In the next few days, Chu Mu was completely immersed in the fusion of the strengthened shocking cloud kill and sword burst. He also felt that the bottleneck of his cloud concept seemed to be loosening. There was a wave of energy that was restless. He only needed to break through the bottleneck. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. It was exactly 30 days since Chu Mu found the Cloud Sea Sword technique and the Cloud Breaking Sword technique. It was a full month. It was still Qingfeng Courtyard's back courtyard, but only Chu Mu was there. He stood there motionless, but his eyes were abnormally bright. His radiance shot in all directions and was extremely oppressive. If someone looked carefully at Chu Mu's eyes, they would find that there seemed to be wisps of clouds in the bottom of Chu Mu's eyes. The sword chi in his body was surging violently. He attacked abruptly, and with a flash of sword light, he swung his sword. Instantly, clouds gathered, and white clouds surged forward. Like a gust of wind, within this white cloud with a diameter of 5 meters, there were 10 white clouds with a diameter of less than half a meter that rotated without any pattern. After the huge white cloud rushed out for more than 10 meters, it suddenly exploded. Under the collision, countless white clouds of sword chi, each as thick as a finger, were filled with sharpness like sharp swords. They tore in all directions and directly covered an area of 20 meters. The sharp sound of cutting made people's scalps tingle and their expressions change greatly. Chu Mu's face revealed a satisfied smile. Suddenly, his expression changed. He felt that there seemed to be a vibration in his soul, as if something had pierced through the membrane. The clouds in the bottom of his eyes became denser. Advanced sword technique completed. Cloud essence improved. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 146. The Z period was between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. The sky was so dark that it was difficult to see one's fingers. Most of the disciples of the Sword Academy had entered a deep sleep. They rested to recover from the day's exertion and replenish their energy so that they could cultivate the next day. However, there were still 2 half-step chi transformation swordsmen standing at the entrance of the Sword Academy. They were as immovable as statues, and their auras were restrained. A figure left the Qingfeng Academy. He used a movement technique to silently move through the night, heading west of the Sword Academy. Soon, he arrived at the western wall. He leaped over the wall without the slightest sound and headed outside. He increased his speed and moved forward like a gust of wind. After a while, this figure stopped in front of a bamboo forest. There was a bright moon in the sky, and it emanated a faint and white glow that sprinkled down onto the sky and the earth. It was faintly discernible, and it caused the night sky to seem even more mysterious and gloomy. A gust of wind blew past, causing the night to become even colder. The wind caused the bamboo leaves in the bamboo forest to sway and produce rustling sounds, causing this tranquility to have an even more unique charm that was difficult to describe with words. Chu Mu stood in front of the bamboo forest. His eyes shined brightly as they shot into the bamboo forest. He slowly scanned it as if he wanted to see through the entire forest. What the great accomplishment sword vision brought to him was that such a dark night was no different from daytime in his eyes. It could not affect him in the slightest. Why was Chu Mu not sleeping in the middle of the night and instead running to the bamboo forest outside the Sword Academy? What was his goal? This was because during the day Chu Mu received a letter. The letter was written by Wang Lin and delivered by Wang Qi. The content was that tonight at midnight, 20 kilometers west of the Sword Academy, the various conflicts of the past had been resolved in the bamboo forest. Chu Mu did not tell the contents of the letter to Luo Yufeng and the others, so they did not know that Chu Mu would leave the Azure Edge courtyard at this time and come to the bamboo forest. Intuition told Chu Mu that Wang Lin was probably up to no good, but Chu Mu also wanted to solve this matter. Wang Lin and Lin Luoshui were two people who had left a deep impression on Chu Mu before his soul was fused. It was because of their humiliation and attacks on Chu Mu that Chu Mu was determined to work hard on his cultivation and increase his strength. It had become an obsession. Obsession was sometimes a driving force, but sometimes it was an obstacle. Yet now, Chu Mu's obsession of the past had become an obstacle for the present Chu Mu. This obstacle wasn't simple, because it would cause an invisible effect on the current Chu Mu. This effect would be reflected on his soul. It was like a part of a machine that had dirt on it, causing the machine's operation to be unable to be completely smooth. In the Sword Academy, Chu Mu could indeed challenge Wang Lin and the others to a duel. He was also confident that he could defeat Wang Lin, but Chu Mu had a deeper idea. Once Wang Lin was defeated, he would definitely not give up. Moreover, he was a disciple of a high-grade sword sect. Whether it was in terms of connections or resources, he far surpassed Chu Mu. Therefore, Chu Mu wanted to solve this problem once and for all. There was only one way, and that was to kill Wang Lin. As long as this person was not present, all kinds of problems could be avoided. For Chu Mu, who had comprehended the essence of, the sword is a weapon and the sword is a killing technique, this was the most direct and effective method. Presumably, Wang Lin, who wrote the letter to Chu Mu, also had this idea. I can feel the strands of killing intent in the bamboo forest. Chu Mu thought to himself and sneered. It seems that Wang Lin's so-called solution is not that simple. I just don't know if he has come or not. With this thought, Chu Mu stepped forward and officially entered the bamboo forest. The bamboo forest was not small. Each bamboo was 5 or 6 meters long and grew straight. As the wind blew, bamboo leaves would occasionally fall down and silently cover the ground. Chu Mu's feet stepped on the dried bamboo leaves, creating a slight crackling sound. It was a bit ear-piercing in the middle of the night, but when the wind blew, it dissipated into nothingness. Chu Mu's footsteps were neither fast nor slow. He walked at a normal speed and soon arrived at the center of the bamboo forest. Ha 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 ha! An ear-piercing laughter suddenly rang out. A figure suddenly descended rapidly from above and landed on the ground. Countless cracking sounds rang out as he stepped on the withered bamboo leaf. Even the wind that blew past him paused for a moment. This person's eyes shone brightly. There was a sliver of sharpness and killing intent in them. He shouted in a low voice, Chu Mu, I didn't think you would dare to come. You have some guts. This place will become your burial ground. Wang Qi, so it's you. Where is Wang Lin? Call him out. Chu Mu easily saw the other person's face and faintly smiled. He did not put Wang Qi in his eyes at all. Even though Wang Qi was the same as him and was also in the middle stage of 10th phase. To deal with you, I don't need my third brother. Wang Qi coldly smiled and said with disdain, Don't think that just because you defeated that trash Song Guangtao, your strength is the best. It seems like you are very confident in your own strength. Fine, take out your sword. After I kill you, I will find a chance to deal with Wang Lin. Chu Mu did not care and said. Wang Qi's face changed and his killing intent exploded. Tonight will be the day you die. He pulled out his sword and slashed out. Sword Qi slashed out horizontally and horizontally, bringing with it a burst of sharp wind. The eerie trajectory was extremely gloomy, as if the surrounding night had become darker. His body swayed and moved with the wind, easily dodging a few sword chi. The bamboos behind him were sliced by the sword chi and fell to the ground, crashing into the other bamboos, creating a strange creaking sound. To me, you are too weak. Call out the other people who are lying in ambush. Chu Mu's body was erratic, making it impossible for Wang Qi to lock on to him. Since he could not lock on to him, he could not attack. And Chu Mu's words made Wang Qi's face change. His eyes were filled with shock. Fine. Since you've noticed, we'll do as you wish. Everyone, come out. After all, Chu Mu will not be able to leave here alive tonight. Wang Qi growled. Immediately after, a series of cracking sounds rang out. From the dried bamboo leaves in the surroundings, figures shot out like arrows. There were a total of 5 figures. After charging out from the ground, they stepped on the bamboo and used the momentum to bounce back, turning into arrows that left the bowstring. A series of sharp clanging sounds rang out. At the same time, a dazzling sword light flickered, making Chu Mu's eyes narrow slightly. In an instant, 5 extremely sharp sword lights that were filled with indomitable killing intent had already slashed through space from 5 different angles. Wang Qi also grasped that instant of opportunity and used his sword technique's killer move. His sword transformed into an extremely sharp storm that pierced through the air with a rumbling sound. It also brought with it a gloomy coldness that caused one's scalp to turn numb. In the face of this killing move, Chu Mu's expression was cold and solemn. His eyes exploded with an extremely shocking light, piercing through space and tearing through the darkness. 6 terrifying killing intents invaded his body and locked onto him, making Chu Mu feel a sense of helplessness. Wang Qi's group of 6 had already discussed their killing moves and had gone through many simulations in order to achieve perfection. If it were anyone else, even a half-step Qi transformation sword cultivator, they would most likely die on the spot in the face of such a killing move. However, Chu Mu was different. He was a sword grandmaster. His Deshang could see through the night like it was day. With a single glance, his eyes seemed to flicker with lightning as he clearly saw the trajectories of the 6 people's killing moves. Chu Mu's body swayed, his front, back, left, and right flickering. In the blink of an eye, Chu Mu's body changed several times before he finally broke free from the 6 people's killing intent. With a slash of his sword, he broke through a gap and charged out like a gust of wind. As he leapt forward, the tip of his foot tapped on a bamboo. Sword chi surged out violently as if it had fused with the sword in his hand, turning into a sharp sword light that pierced straight towards Wang Qi. Not good! Wang Qi was immediately horrified. He forcibly stopped his killing move and used his movement technique to dodge Chu Mu's sword, ignoring the damage to his meridians. He let out a muffled groan as he felt the pain of his meridians being torn apart. A trace of blood leaked out from the corner of his mouth. The other 5 people's strength was exceptional, and their reactions were extremely fast. The moment Chu Mu escaped, the 5 swords clashed, creating a terrifying ear-piercing collision sound. Sparks flew, and a dazzling sword light burst forth. Using the force of the collision, the 5 people turned their bodies. The sword light flashed as they slashed towards Chu Mu once again. However, the perfect combination of the 6 people had already been broken by Chu Mu. Their sword attacks and the trajectories of their bodies were clearly displayed in front of Chu Mu's eyes. A bright light bloomed in his eyes as his killing intent bloomed like a flower. Just nice, I'll use you guys to test the power of my new advanced rank sword skill, cloud-shattering sword explosion. All of a sudden, 20% of the cloud mentality was integrated into the new advanced rank sword skill, cloud-shattering sword explosion, increasing its power by 2-fold. It was extremely terrifying. At that moment, no matter if it was Wang Qi or the other 5 swordsmen, all of their faces changed drastically. Their eyes were filled with shock, and their hearts were filled with an extremely strong sense of danger. They could only feel that death was about to envelop them, seeping into their pores from all directions and directly attacking their souls. They could not help but shiver all over. In their eyes, a white cloud that was spinning at a high speed suddenly appeared and rushed towards them. A terrifying chill covered their entire bodies. Because it was too fast, they could not dodge it in time. They crashed into that rolling white cloud head-on. Kill! With a loud shout, sword chi surged all over their bodies, forming a sword chi armor. At the same time, they continuously used their killing move. As the sword light panicked, chilly winds howled, lightning flashed, and fire surged, all of them attacking the white cloud. The white cloud seemed to be unable to withstand it and suddenly exploded. A sense of danger that was so strong that it was beyond the limit rang like an alarm bell. Streaks of white cloud sword chi that were as thick as a finger but as sharp as a pseudo-sword shot out in all directions, densely piercing through the void and covering an area of 20 meters in the blink of an eye. Several shrill cries of agony tore through the night sky, and countless green bamboos were pierced through and snapped, creaking as they slowly fell to the ground. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 147. The bright white moon seemed to have traces of red spreading across it. It was destined that tonight would not be a peaceful night. Within the bamboo forest, Chu Mu slowly walked over with his sword in hand. The sound of his feet stepping on the dried bamboo leaves was extremely ear-piercing, causing Wang Chi's heart to beat wildly. His body trembled slightly, but he had no strength to stand up. His arms, thighs, and abdomen were all pierced through by the terrifying white cloud sword chi. Even his bones were clearly injured. Blood flowed out from the wounds and seeped into the dried bamboo leaf. As he grew weaker and weaker, Wang Chi's heart was filled with unwillingness and shock. He had trained bitterly for a month. Not only had he successfully broken through to the middle stage of 10th stage, he had also changed to a top-grade yellow-level wind sword chi technique. He had also trained the Yin Wind sword technique to small completion. His overall strength had clearly increased by a lot. Adding on the fact that the 5 10th phase peak and late 10th phase swordsmen who wanted to obtain benefits were lying in ambush here, they laid down a killing move. Their goal was to eliminate Chu Mu in one fell swoop and get rid of the worry in their hearts. But they did not expect that not only had Chu Mu broken their ambush, but he had also escaped from their perfect ambush and counterattack. What was even more unexpected was that Chu Mu's strength had increased by a lot compared to a month ago. The power of that high-level sword technique could be said to be terrifying. Forcefully turning his head, Wang Chi could see the 5 corpses not far away. They lay motionless on the ground, allowing their blood to flow freely. Wang Chi faintly saw their eyes open and staring at him, filled with unwillingness and questioning. If the 5 of them had not taken the brunt of the countless sword chi, Wang Chi would have died just like them. But right now, he was also in a state of near death. It was even more painful. Forcefully turning his head again, his vision had already begun to blur. He could faintly see a sword light stop above his head. Don't kill me." Wang Chi's lips moved with difficulty. He did not even know what he was saying. If it were not for Chu Mu's powerful hearing, he probably would not have been able to hear it clearly. "After you die, Wang Lin will soon go down to accompany you," Chu Mu said softly. His voice was like a thread, directly entering Wang Chi's ears. Even if there were others standing beside him, they would definitely not be able to hear it. That was because Chu Mu had imitated the sword chi sound transmission of experts in the chi transformation realm. He had directly integrated his voice into the sword chi and transmitted it to the other party's ears through the sword chi. Currently, Chu Mu could control a range of 8 meters. That was to say, within 8 meters, Chu Mu could transmit his voice using sword chi like a chi transformation realm expert. Wang Chi, whose consciousness was already starting to blur, heard Chu Mu's external sword aura sound transmission and was instantly stunned. His eyes opened wide and his entire body began to violently tremble. His right hand was barely able to hold onto the sword. He strenuously tried to raise the sword and stab at Chu Mu. But because he had lost too much blood, he was already powerless. He fell from the air, his neck twisted and his head tilted to one side. He breathed his last. Chu Mu glanced at them. After confirming that all 6 of them were dead, a smile appeared on his face as he started harvesting. When he returned to the Sword Academy, Chu Mu used his movement technique to leap over the wall and silently returned to the Qingfeng Academy. Theoretically speaking, it was not allowed to leave the Sword Academy in the middle of the night. Even if one wanted to leave, they had to go through the main gate and be checked. However, it was best not to let anyone know about the fight in the bamboo forest. However, what Chu Mu did not know was that his fight in the bamboo forest and his return to the Qingfeng Academy had been seen by someone. He's actually a disciple of a low-tier sword sect. That's beyond my expectations. Not only did a disciple of a low-tier sword sect kill 6 powerful enemies with his cultivation at the mid-10th phase, he did it so cleanly and decisively. A black figure appeared outside the Qingfeng Academy. He stared at the academy and thought to himself, moreover, he has comprehended 20% of the concept of clouds. The high-tier sword skill he used is something I've never seen before. This child's talent has already surpassed Chu He, Su Jianfeng, and the others. I'll observe him for a while longer. Once I've confirmed it, I'll report it to the Alliance. The black figure seemed to be talking to himself. He said this in a voice that only he could hear. Then he disappeared in a flash, as if he had never appeared. Killing Wang Qi and the other 5 did not take much time for Chu Mu. Thus, when he left, it was the beginning of the Z period. When he returned, it was still the Z period. Chu Mu did not feel sleepy. He sat on his bed and took out his spoils of war one by one from his spatial bracelet. He carefully examined them. Of the 6 killed swordsmen, apart from Wang Qi, who was at the mid-10th phase, the other 5 were at the late 10th phase and 2 were at the peak of the 10th phase. Looking at their fierce attacks, they should be people with rich experience in fighting. There were 3 books. Chu Mu flipped through them one by one. His eyes lit up. He felt that his harvest was not bad. The Yin Wind Sword Qi Art was a top-grade yellow-tier sword Qi Art. Like the Shangyuan Sword Qi Art, it also had 7 levels. However, when it was cultivated to the end, it did not condense a strand of Xiantian Sword Qi like the Shangyuan Sword Qi Art. It seemed that overall, it was not as good as the Shangyuan Sword Qi Art. However, the sword Qi it cultivated carried a gloomy chill, like a cold wind blowing. The Great Wind Sword Art was a wind elemental advanced sword art. After mastering it, one's sword would create gusts of wind that whistled through the air. Among wind elemental sword arts, it tended to be more imposing, so its power was naturally not weak. The fleeting wind shadow was a high-grade movement skill. After looking at its name and content, it leaned towards the wind attribute, which made Chu Mu's eyes light up. Up until now, his wind travel movement technique was still at the middle stage. Because of the 30% wind concept, it was close to a high-stage movement technique. However, it was only after being perfectly killed by the 6 people that Chu Mu felt that his own movement technique, even with the 30% wind concept support, was somewhat powerless. Now that he saw that this high-grade movement skill belonged to the wind attribute, Chu Mu could not help but feel happy. It was like a timely rain. In addition to these 3 books, there were 6 fake swords. Chu Mu also found 3 Qi increasing pills on their bodies. Although it was not much, it was still a good harvest. It had to be known that a disciple of a low-grade sword sect could only obtain 1 Qi increasing pill every year. The Yin Wind Sword Qi Art is not as good as the Shangyuan Sword Qi Art, but I can keep it. The Great Wind Sword Art is a high-grade sword art, which can solve my current predicament of lacking a high-grade wind attribute sword art, Chu Mu thought to himself. Chu Mu's current wind attribute sword art was mainly the clear wind sword art. However, the clear wind sword art was an intermediate grade sword art and could not keep up with the pace. Apart from that, there was also the super sword skill, aspect of wind, which could only be used at the Qi transformation realm. Even the simplified version of aspect of wind could only be used as a trump card. The appearance of the Gale sword skill was equivalent to solving the current predicament. Deshang's gold-tip sword art was still some distance away from perfection. As for the cloud attribute, he had created the cloud-shattering sword explosion. Even among high-grade sword arts, it was a very powerful sword art. Adding on the 20% increase, it was even more powerful. It was almost on par with the simplified version of the form of wind. Once I master it, my wind attribute shortcoming will be temporarily solved. If I can achieve small success in both sword arts, then my overall strength will increase again, Chu Mu thought to himself. He had decided on the direction of his cultivation. The sky was bright. Wang Qi and the others had not returned all night, so Wang Lin naturally could not rest in peace. Thus, as soon as the sky brightened, Wang Lin and Guo Qingji left the Sword Academy together. They went to the bamboo forest 20 miles to the west. As soon as they entered the bamboo forest, they saw 6 corpses. The 6 corpses were in different positions, but they all had one thing in common. There were many finger-sized wounds on their bodies. The blood had long dried up, and their skin was pale and dry. Second brother. Wang Lin stared blankly at Wang Qi's corpse. His heart was in a mess. Grief and anger filled his heart and brain. He squatted down beside Wang Qi. Guo Qingji stood to the side and watched. He felt a bit sad, but more than that, he was shocked. This was because he knew what had happened last night. It was precisely because he knew what had happened that he was even more shocked. Compared to Wang Lin's grief, Guo Qingji maintained his calm, because the people who died had nothing to do with him. His heart trembled, and he silently rejoiced that he didn't start a conflict with the Qingfeng courtyard disciple Chu Mu. Otherwise, he would have lost all face. For example, Guo Qingji was the target of the simulation last night. Even with his powerful strength, he could not escape from their killing intent. But now it was the 6 of them who had been killed here. Chu Mu, I must kill you. Wang Lin stood up again. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with killing intent. His hands were clenched into fists. Sword chi surged from his body. The killing intent on his body was so sharp that it seemed to shoot straight into the sky. Guo Qingji was secretly shocked. Junior brother, if they were really killed by Chu Mu, our current strength is not enough to kill Chu Mu, Guo Qingji said. He was optimistic about Wang Lin. Wang Lin was a 6th-grade talent, the same as Su Jianfeng. Wang Lin's talent in swordsmanship was stronger than Su Jianfeng's. This meant that Wang Lin had the chance to catch up to Su Jianfeng, or even surpass him. Guo Qingji knew his own talent and ability. If he relied on himself, it would be difficult for him to reach a high level. Therefore, he needed someone to rely on. Although relying on Su Jianfeng was good, it was just icing on the cake. However, relying on Wang Lin was like providing charcoal in snowy weather. The meaning was completely different. I know. In half a year, there will be a new round of the top 100 battles. At that time, I will use this opportunity to kill Chu Mu. Wang Lin relaxed his fists and withdrew his killing intent. However, his words revealed a terrifying killing intent that caused the air to tremble. Yes, in another half a year, I believe that Junior's strength will become even stronger. I will also be able to break through to the half-step Qi transformation stage. When that time comes, it will be the time of Chu Mu's death. Guo Qingji also let out a cold smile as he spoke. Everything would be decided in the top 100 battles. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 148. In the blink of an eye, Another half a year had passed and Chu Mu had passed the age of 17. This was the 7th month since Chu Mu had entered the Lizho Sword Academy. In the first month, trouble often came to him, but in the next half a year, it was peaceful. Chu Mu spent most of his time in the Qinfeng courtyard, not leaving his room and concentrating on his cultivation. At dawn, it was late autumn again and the weather became cold again. Wisps of cold air floated in the air. As it entered his nostrils, waves of coldness swept through his body. After completing the 33 heavenly cycles of sword qi, Chu Mu slowly opened his eyes. His gaze was as clear as autumn water. He opened his mouth and exhaled a breath of turbid air. It shot out like a sword and only dissipated when it reached a distance of 3 meters. Chu Mu's sword qi cultivation was clearly much stronger than half a year ago. That's right, his sword qi cultivation was at the late 10th stage and had completely stabilized. It was in the process of reaching the peak. The 7th level of the Shangyuan sword qi technique had also been raised from the initial stage to the perfection stage. Although the Shangyuan sword qi had not become purer, Chu Mu had a feeling that the speed of condensing Xiantian sword qi was definitely faster than before. Previously, he had used the Xiantian sword qi once to kill a qi transformation stage swordsman. After that, it took a full half a month for the Xiantian sword qi to completely condense. But now, Chu Mu felt that he might not even need 10 days to condense one Xiantian sword qi. It was a pity that this Xiantian sword qi could only automatically condense one Xiantian sword qi. I wonder what level my overall strength is at now? Chu Mu thought to himself after finishing his cultivation. Golden Edge Sword Technique, Gale Sword Technique, and Shattering Cloud Sword Explosion were all perfect. His wind concept was still at 30%, but Chu Mu felt that he had already reached the limit of 30%. If he improved further, he would break through to 40%. However, his cloud concept was still at 20% with some improvement. His metal concept was still at 10% with some improvement. After comprehending the first concept, comprehending the second concept would become even more difficult. The difficulty of comprehending the third concept would be several times greater than the second. Although Chu Mu had already mentally prepared himself for this, after half a year of not making any progress in the concept of metal, he still felt somewhat helpless. In addition, the progress of sword force mastery was also very slow. He did not know how long it would take for him to reach small accomplishment. However, Chu Mu wasn't in a hurry. In the entire Azure Edge Sword sect, only the Sword Pavilion Elder had comprehended sword force. Moreover, even after a dozen years, he had only comprehended it to the small success stage. It could be seen that comprehending sword force was tens of times more difficult than comprehending intent. It's a pity that the sword qi protection secret technique doesn't have the 3rd level, so I can't continue to cultivate it. Muttering to himself, Chu Mu stood up and walked out of the pavilion with the 2 fake swords. He headed to the backyard, preparing to practice his swordsmanship. "Junior brother, you came just in time. Let's go." Luo Yufeng and the others were practicing their swordsmanship in the backyard. When they saw Chu Mu appear, Luo Yufeng immediately said, "Where are we going?" Chu Mu did not understand. This year's battle for the top 100 is about to begin. All the disciples of the Sword Academy have to gather at the Sword Battle Arena. Luo Yufeng said as he walked towards the front yard. The others followed. After half a year of cultivation, everyone's cultivation had clearly increased. Luo Yufeng had successfully broken through to half-step qi transformation realm. Because he had reached the peak of 10th phase for almost a year, and with the supply of several qi increasing pills, it was expected that he would break through. Zheng Shuran had also broken through to the peak of 10th phase, while Zhou Jin had broken through to the late 10th phase. Li Yi Yuanhua, Wang Tingo, and Xie Chunlei had all successfully broken through to the mid-10th phase. In terms of swordsmanship, they had all made significant progress. When they arrived at the sword battle arena, Many disciples had already gathered in the spectator seat. At a rough glance, there were at least 1,000 people, and they were seated according to different sword sections. In front of them, there was a sign with the name of a certain sword sect. Chu Mu and the others walked to the wooden sign of the Qinfeng sword sect and sat down. Some gazes fell on Chu Mu and the others, and finally focused on Chu Mu's face. Chu He, Chu Tian, Chu Hong, Lin Luoshui, Wang Lin, Guo Qingji, and the others all had different gazes. Junior brother, look. That person is Su Jianfeng of the Shangxian sword sect, and that is Li Huayu of the Plain Heart sword sect, and that is Crown Prince Zhou Hongyu. Luo Yufeng whispered to Chu Mu and hinted with his eyes, they are the 4 heroes of the Sword Academy, along with Chu He. They are all in the Qi transformation realm, and it is said that they have comprehended the intent realm. Their strength is very terrifying. Whether it was to qualify for the top 100 or for other reasons, the 4 heroes of the Sword Academy were all people that they needed to know. The 4 of them can definitely enter the top 100, and the top 4 will be occupied by the 4 of them. Luo Yufeng continued in a low voice, however, as long as they can enter the top 100, they will be able to obtain a place to cultivate in the Great Kuan Sword Mansion. At that time, breaking through to the Qi transformation realm will be a simple matter. Great Kuan Sword Palace. Chu Mu was slightly startled. He abruptly remembered that on the way to Li State Sword Academy, he had encountered a swordsman who called himself Zhuge Ming in White Maple Mountain. He seemed to be him, a disciple of Great Kuan Sword Palace. At this time, Wang Lin and Guo Qingji walked to the camp of the Qinfeng sword sect, and stared straight at Chu Mu. They did not hide the murderous intent in their eyes, making everyone feel as if they were facing a great enemy. Chu Mu, I have waited for this day for a long time, Wang Lin said slowly, his voice cold. From now on, you don't need to wait anymore, Chu Mu said lightly. Humph. Wang Lin sneered, and turned to stride away, returning to the camp of the Shangshuan sword sect. Their confusing conversation made people look at each other in dismay, and they instinctively felt that something was wrong. Staring at Wang Lin's back, Chu Mu's eyes flashed with a trace of contemplation. The sword qi that leaked from Wang Lin's body was clearly much stronger than that of Chu Mu's. This meant that Wang Lin's sword qi cultivation was at least at the peak of the 10th stage. Moreover, Wang Qi was a disciple of a high-grade sword sect. The sword qi that he cultivated might not be inferior to the Shangyuan sword qi technique. In that case, Wang Lin's sword qi might be able to condense a streak of Xiantian sword qi. However, it was unknown whether Wang Lin had cultivated to that level. In the battle of the top 100, let's put an end to all the grievances and possible troubles of the past. Chu Mu thought to himself. His mind suddenly became clear, as if as long as he put an end to all these grievances, something would happen. He glanced at Lin Luoshui, and Lin Luoshui happened to look at him as well. There was anger and viciousness in her eyes. Who is he? Su Jianfeng looked at Chu Mu and asked indifferently. Senior brother Su, he is Chu Mu, a disciple of the Qinfeng Academy. He came to the Sword Academy to study this year, and as soon as he arrived, he defeated Chu Mu with his cultivation at the middle of the 10th stage. The person next to him hurriedly told him everything he knew about Chu Mu. Oh, it seems that he is quite capable. Su Jianfeng nodded, but did not take it to heart. In his eyes, Chu Mu's ability was not bad, but it was not enough for him to take him seriously. After all, in Su Jianfeng's opinion, it was not impossible for a middle of the 10th stage to defeat a peak 10th stage. However, the sword qi realm, to put it bluntly, was only the beginning of a swordsman's life. Only when one stepped into the qi transformation realm would one understand how vast the world of swordsmen was. It could be said that whether one stepped into the qi transformation realm or not, there was a huge gap between heaven and earth. In the Sword Academy, there were only 3 people that Su Jianfeng took seriously. Other than them, he did not care about anyone else. At this time, there were several sharp sounds of wind breaking. 5 black figures flew in from the entrance of the sword battle arena like arrows. In a flash, they landed in the middle of the arena like an illusion. These 5 people all looked to be in their 50s. 4 of them stood at the 4 corners of the arena, while the last one stood in the middle. A pair of clear and bright eyes slowly swept across the arena. His gaze was so focused that the expressions of those who were swept by him changed. They felt uneasy as if all their secrets had been seen through. When this person's gaze swept over Chumu, he paused for a moment. There seemed to be an imperceptible smile on his old-fashioned face. I am Ling Tsangyan, Deputy Headmaster of the Sword Academy of Li Province. I will still be in charge of the Sword Academy battle for the top 100. The old man withdrew his gaze and spoke in a loud voice. A blazing aura swept out, causing the air to hum and tremble. It was so powerful that no one dared to make a sound. They even subconsciously held their breath. The top 100 of the Sword Academy is related to the number of places to cultivate in the Sword Mansion. It is extremely important. In theory, any disciple of the Sword Academy is qualified to participate. However, the battle for the top 100 is not child's play. There are all kinds of dangers and life and death. Therefore, if you want to participate in the battle for the top 100, you must pass a test. As soon as his voice fell, Ling Tsangyan waved his hand and a shadow flashed across the air. On the sword battle stage, a milky white pillar appeared out of thin air. It was as thick as a wash basin and 3 meters tall, standing firm on the stage. This test is very simple. You just need to attack the pillar with your sword. How you attack is completely up to you. What sword technique you use is also up to you. As long as you can make the pillar change and show the strength of your attack, you will pass the test and be qualified to participate in the battle for the top 100, Ling Tsangyan said slowly. This test method immediately lit up the eyes of the new disciples. It also lit up the eyes of those who had participated in the test in the past. Eldest senior brother, this seems to be different from the test method you mentioned? Yuan Wenhua asked in a low voice. Yes, it is indeed different. The test method I mentioned was the previous 2 tests. Luo Yufeng said in a low voice. The Sword Academy will use several different test methods in rotation. I have heard of this strength testing pillar test before. For a time, this new testing method made many disciples feel very fresh. Each and every one of them was eager to try it out. They wanted to see how strong their attacks were. As if he could see the eagerness of the crowd, Ling Tsangyan smiled slowly and raised his hand. The test begins with the 3 high-grade sword sects and the Crown Prince's courtyard. As soon as he finished speaking, a few figures immediately used their movement skills and flew over. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 149. Watch me, autumn water long sky. A wisp of sword light spread out like autumn water and tore through the sky with a ghastly aura. The sword's shadow was cold as it slashed onto the strength measuring pillar. With a bang, the sword chi shattered. The strength measuring pillar didn't move in the slightest, but the milky white pillar suddenly emitted a faint red glow that lasted for a breath of time before disappearing. The swordsman put his sword back into its scabbard and looked at Ling Tsangyan nervously, waiting for the result. Faint red light just under the standard. You pass. Ling Tsangyan said slowly. One of the elders took out a wooden plate and threw it to the swordsman. This wooden plate could only be obtained by the swordsman who passed the test. It was a symbol of entering the top 100. Everyone only had one chance to test their skills. Therefore, the swordsmen at the beginning all mustered up their strength and attacked with all their might, displaying their strongest killing moves or sword skills. After that, the swordsmen gradually figured out the rules and started to control their strength. Anyway, they only needed to make the pillar emit a faint red light to pass. Of course, there were also those who liked to show off and used their full strength to make the pillar emit a red light or even a dark red light. Chu He from the Raging Wave Sword Sect, Su Jianfeng from the Shangxian Sword Sect, Li Huayu from the Pure Heart Sword Sect, and Zhou Hongyu from the Prefecture Lord's Crown Prince also made their move. They did not use any killing moves or sword skills, but directly used their sword qi to attack the pillar. The power of Xiantian's sword qi was indeed very terrifying. With a casual attack, the pillar emitted a dark red light that lasted for 3 breaths of time before disappearing. It was very shocking. After the 3 top-rank sword sects and the Prefecture Lord's Crown Prince finished their tests, it was the turn of the 8 middle-rank sword sections. Wang Lin went up on stage and used a high-grade sword technique to directly send out a red light. Meanwhile, Lin Luoshui sent out a faint red light. As for Chu Tian and Chu Hong, the faint red light lasted for less than a breath of time and did not pass. But they were not discouraged. After all, they had only been in the Sword Academy for less than a year. They still had a chance. Because each person only had 1 chance to make a move, it was very fast. Not long after, the 8 middle-grade sword sects finished their test, and it was now the turn of the 36 lower-grade sword sections. Eldest senior brother, not only will you pass the test this time, you might even be able to enter the top 100 and go to the Sword Mansion to cultivate. At that time, breaking through to the Qi transformation realm won't be difficult, Zhou Jin said with some envy, but more than that, he was happy. Yes. Luo Yufeng nodded, feeling somewhat confident. The sword qi of a half-step qi condensation cultivator was much stronger than that of a peak 10th stage cultivator. Furthermore, he had frequently sparred with Chu Mu over the past half a year. His improvement in sword techniques was very obvious. He was more than 2 times stronger than before. Currently, there were less than 100 disciples who had reached the half-step qi transformation stage. If nothing unexpected happened, he should be able to enter the top 100. I think that besides me, second junior brother, third junior brother, and youngest junior brother should be able to pass the test and enter the top 100. Especially youngest junior brother, there shouldn't be a problem for him to enter the top 100. Yes, I believe youngest junior brother will definitely have no problems. Zhou Jin and the others nodded vigorously. They felt that if even youngest junior brother couldn't do it, then there weren't many people in the entire Sword Mansion who could. This was because even Luo Yufeng, who had reached the half-step qi transformation stage, wasn't a match for Chu Mu. Only the 4 heroes of the Sword Mansion could defeat Chu Mu. As for the 4 of you, 4th junior brother, you can also go and test the strength of your attack. You can also set a goal for yourselves, Luo Yufeng said. Li Yi and the other 3 nodded. They were only at middle stage 10th stage. There weren't many disciples in each of the 36 lower-grade sword sections. The most disciples were 20, while the Qingfeng Academy had 8. Thus, it was soon the turn of the Qingfeng Academy's disciples to take the test. As the eldest senior brother, Luo Yufeng went up first, followed by Zhou Jin and Jing Shiran. They went up according to their ranking. Great Gale moves the forest. Luo Yufeng used the Great Wind Sword Art's high-level killer move, and one sword attack brought out a light cyan-colored tornado. It whistled through the air, as if it was going to uproot the entire forest. It landed on the testing pillar, and immediately, a red light flashed for a second before disappearing. Luo Yufeng naturally passed the test and obtained a wooden tablet. Next was Zhou Jin. Zhou Jin only had a cultivation base of late 10th phase. Thus, he channeled his sword qi and used all his strength. His face was flushed red as he directly used the Flash Thunder Sword Art's high-level killing move. It was like a jumping lightning bolt that struck the strength measuring pillar. The pillar flashed, and a faint red light appeared, but it disappeared in an instant. In less than a breath's time, he couldn't pass. Zhou Jin was somewhat depressed. Chu Mu looked at Zhou Jin thoughtfully. Zhou Jin's cultivation should be enough, but he himself was proficient in the gold element, but it was an incomplete gold element high-grade sword art. He didn't have a high-grade killing move, so he practiced the Thunder Flash sword art for half a year. He barely achieved a small success and couldn't fully exert its power. Zheng Xiuran's cultivation was at the peak of 10th stage, and the Thunder Flash sword art was also at the small success level. He was much better than Zhou Jin and passed the test. Song Guangtao of the Qinglan courtyard saw that Zhou Jin and Zheng Xiuran were both using the Thunder Flash sword art. He suddenly gritted his teeth and his face was full of hatred. The veins on the back of his hand bulged, and his heart was filled with anger. He had won the Thunder Flash sword art from him. Li Yi Yuanhua, Wang Tingo, and Xie Chunlei took action one after another. However, their cultivation was not high, and their swordsmanship was not much different from Zhou Jin's. Therefore, they barely made the pillar flash with a faint red light. They didn't pass the test. Finally, it was Chu Mu's turn. When everyone returned to their seats in the Qingfeng courtyard, they passed by Chu Mu and whispered, "Little junior brother, do your best." Yes. Chu Mu nodded. Song Guangtao's eyes were almost spitting fire. Wang Lin's eyes became very cold. Chu He glanced at Chu Mu expressionlessly, but Chu Tian and Chu Hong were a little excited. Chu Mu didn't care about these gazes. What surprised him was that the old man who claimed to be the deputy headmaster was staring at him with a trace of surprise in his eyes. It felt like he was going to see through him. Chu Mu remembered that when the old man looked at others before, he didn't seem to have this kind of gaze. He just glanced at them. With a trace of doubt, Chu Mu walked step by step toward the pillar. Without stopping, his right hand drew his sword like lightning and used the Thunder Flash sword art. The sword chi was rampant, and the strong wind blew, making people's clothes flutter. The great wind sword art's high-level killing move bombarded the pillar. Suddenly, the pillar emitted a red light that lasted for 2 breaths of time before dissipating. Chu He and the others were stunned. According to the previous rules, any late-stage 10th phase sword artist would either not be able to pass the test, or they would only be able to emit a faint red light that would last for a breath of time. Especially disciples of low-grade sword sects, their elimination rate was extremely high. This disciple does have some skill. Su Jianfeng smiled and said. Li Huayu indifferently stared at Chu Mu for a little while Zhou Hongyu glanced at him and no longer paid attention to him. On the other hand, the other sword faction disciples all stared at Chu Mu. Their hearts were filled with surprise, and they paid more attention to Chu Mu. Ling Tsongyan's eyes flashed with a touch of surprise. Half a year ago, he happened to see a fight in the bamboo forest. Chu Mu used a high-level sword skill of the cloud attribute, which was extremely powerful and contained the essence of the cloud. Therefore, Ling Tsongyan subjectively thought that Chu Mu would use a cloud attribute sword skill to attack the pillar. He didn't expect that Chu Mu would use a wind attribute sword skill. Moreover, it seemed that he had practiced the Great Wind sword art to Deshang's level of perfection. This Qingfeng courtyard disciple is really interesting. Ling Tsongyan said to himself. It seems that he is hiding a lot of skills. Well, if you can enter the top 100, I will look for you again. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 150. The Sword Academy held the competition for the top 100 once a year, so they didn't make it too grand. After a round of tests, those who did not pass returned, while those who passed left the Sword Academy with the vice-headmaster and the 4 elders, heading towards the Dali mountain range. Along the way, hundreds of figures leaped and moved. They quickly left the Sword Academy and entered the Dali mountain range. Eldest senior brother and youngest junior brother should have no problem entering the top 100. I wonder if third senior brother can enter the top 100. Li Yi and the others whispered as they returned to Qingfeng courtyard. Zheng Xiuran was at the peak of 10th stage, but many of those who passed the test were at the peak of 10th stage, so he didn't have much of an advantage. Let's also work hard and try to enter the next competition for the top 100. The test of attacking the strength measuring pillar was neither difficult nor easy, but it was a dividing line. Basically, those whose sword chi cultivation hadn't reached the peak of 10th stage didn't pass. A portion of those who reached the peak of 10th stage didn't pass because they didn't have enough sword skills or killing moves. In the end, there were a total of 400 people who passed the test. Among these 400 people, Chu He, Su Jianfeng, Li Huayu, and Zhou Hongyu were the most successful. There were also 93 half-step Qi transformation disciples. The 3 high-rank sword sects and the heir's courtyard accounted for more than half, and the remaining half belonged to the middle-rank sword sections. There were only a dozen half-step Qi transformation disciples from the 36 low-rank sword sects, and Luo Yufeng was one of them. There were nearly 200 peak 10th stage disciples, of which the 3 high-rank sword sects and the heir's courtyard accounted for more than 100, and the 8 middle-rank sword sects accounted for nearly 100. As for the 36 low-rank sword sects, there were only 40 or so. As for late-stage 10th stage disciples, there were less than 100, and most of them were from the 3 high-rank sword sects and the heir's courtyard, followed by the 8 middle-rank sword sects, and very few of the 36 low-rank sword sections. About an hour later, Vice Academy Master Ling Tsongyen and the 4 elders stopped, and the 400 disciples followed suit. In front of them was a valley. The valley was surrounded by precipitous cliffs. There was only one entrance, and it was blocked by a huge round rock. This valley is called Dali Valley. It's a place that the Sword Academy opened up for the competition between the top 100. The Vice Hall Master turned around and faced the many disciples. He clasped his hands behind his back and said in a loud and clear voice, "You will enter after the 4 elders open the entrance. Within the valley, there are a total of 100 short swords. Some of these short swords may be visible to you at a glance, while others will need to be carefully searched for. 1 short sword represents 1 spot, and 100 short swords represent the top 100 spot." Also, a strange smile suddenly appeared on Ling Tsongyan's face. In order to make it easier for you to search, each sword will emit a red glow. With that, the 4 elders finished moving the sword energy and shot out 4 extremely terrifying sword energies. The moment these sword energies appeared, they felt like they were in a raging sea and were about to be submerged. The 4 substantial sword energies bombarded the boulder, and with a rumbling sound, the boulder rolled inwards, revealing an entrance. "Little guys, it's time to go in. Once you see a signal flare exploding above the valley, it means that the competition is over and you must gather outside the valley," Ling Tsongyen said in a clear voice. His eyes swept across the crowd and fell on Chu Mu's face. With a faint smile on his face, Chu Mu was a little vigilant. Su Jianfeng did not say a word and turned into a stream of light and rushed directly into the valley. Chu He and the others did not fall behind and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Immediately after, the other disciples also moved and rushed into the valley like arrows. After the last person entered the valley, the boulder rolled back to its original place. "For elders, let's go." Ling Tsongyen looked for a while and waved his sleeve. His whole body leaped up like a big bird and flew in the direction of the Sword Academy. As soon as they entered the valley, some of them formed groups and some of them went alone. They all wanted to be the first to find the short sword. When Chu Mu entered, Wang Lin and the others had already disappeared. Finding the short sword was the most important thing, especially since they did not know when the signal flare would appear. Hatred and whatnot could be solved after finding the short sword. "Third brother, little brother, let's go together," Luo Yufeng said. Chu Mu and Jing Xiuran nodded. Inside the valley there were many trees. Some of the terrain was flat while others were steep. However, for sword artists who were at least 10th phase, it was not much of a hindrance. However, because they were looking for the short sword, everyone's speed was not fast. Their eyes were sharp, radiating light in all directions. They carefully scanned the front, back, left, and right, not missing a single spot. This valley was not small. They could not see the end of it. There was only a vast expanse of trees. Gusts of wind blew past, causing the branches to sway and the leaves to fall. The surrounding grass also swayed with the wind. In the distance there was the roar of a beast. It was angry, but it turned into a mournful wail before abruptly stopping. This meant that some Sword Academy disciples had encountered some fierce beasts and started fighting. In this valley, besides finding the short sword, there might also be some spirit herbs. Luo Yufeng said, I remember that in last year's top 100 competition, there was a disciple from a low-rank sword faction who found a very good spirit herb. After eating it, his cultivation broke through to half-step chi transformation. In the end, he won a short sword and entered the top 100. Chu Mu and Jing Xiuran were slightly startled. Moreover, if you find a spirit herb, even if you can't use it, you can keep it. Who knows, it might come in handy in the future. Luo Yufeng continued, however, everything is still focused on finding the short sword. If you find any spirit herbs in the process, you can't let them go. Eldest senior brother, you participated last time. With your experience, where would the short sword usually be? It was rare for Jing Xiuran to speak so much. That's really hard to say. Luo Yufeng pondered for a moment. It's like what the vice headmaster said. If you're lucky, you can see the short sword at a glance. Sometimes you can't find it no matter how hard you look. The short sword might be right under your nose. Sometimes it might be in a tree. It might also be under a river. It might also be in the nest of some fierce beast. It might even be in the belly of a fierce beast. However, every short sword will emit a red light. Although the range of the red light is only about 1 meter, it's still a rather conspicuous mark. Jing Xiuran nodded. Chu Mu had been listening without saying anything. However, he had been paying attention to the surroundings, hoping to find the short sword. To be continued. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 151. Let's take a break and prepare for the third one. I sincerely ask for your support. Perhaps their luck was not good. The three of them had been in the valley for 2 to 4 hours, but they had not found a single dagger, nor any spirit herbs. They had only killed 2 ferocious beasts. It seemed that the ferocious beasts in the valley were all high-level ferocious beasts, and their strength was comparable to a 10th phase sword warrior. However, in front of Chu Mu and the other 2, they were no different than ants. Haha, I found the dagger. Suddenly, an uncontrollable sound of ecstasy exploded like thunder, immediately attracting everyone's attention. Even Chu Mu and the others looked in the direction of the sound. Then, the 3 of them looked at each other. Let's go! Luo Yufeng shouted in a low voice. Although the dagger was found by someone else, it did not mean that they could not take it. The 3 of them turned into 3 arrows and shot out with a swoosh, sweeping up the grass on the ground. At the same time, a figure shot out from the front like an arrow, making Chu Mu and the other 2 squint their eyes. They saw a circle of red light around his body. Stop, hand over the dagger. Immediately after, several figures flew over at an extremely fast speed, making the air vibrate. Some of them even pulled out their swords, sending out waves of sword chi that cut through the air. The grass on the ground was torn apart, leaving a long mark. The man who was running away with the dagger hurriedly dodged, but his speed was slightly reduced. He was immediately caught up and surrounded. What are you doing? I found this dagger. If you have the ability, go find it yourself. The man who was holding the 30-centimeter-long dagger in his right hand shouted with a face full of anger. The sword chi around his body fluctuated violently, as if he was going to fight for his life. Yes, you found it. Unfortunately, you do not have the strength to protect it. Hand over the dagger obediently. Otherwise, don't blame us for being merciless. 7 people formed a circle, and the leader sneered, pointing his fake sword at the man with a cold face. As for Chu Mu and the other two who were standing not far away, they were directly ignored. The person holding the short sword was at the peak of 10th stage sword chi. Of the 7 people surrounding him, 6 were at the peak of 10th stage, and 1 was at the late 10th stage. With such cultivation, it was no wonder that they could ignore Chu Mu and the others. After all, among Chu Mu's group of 3, 1 was at the half-step chi transformation stage, 1 was at the peak of the 10th stage, and 1 was at the late 10th stage. Although ordinary half-step chi transformation stage cultivators were powerful, they were no match for several peak 10th stage cultivators. Do you want the dagger or do you want your life? Make your choice. I'll count to 3. Perhaps their luck was not good. The 3 of them had been in the valley for 2 to 4 hours, but they had not found a single dagger, nor any spirit herbs. They had only killed 2 ferocious beasts. It seemed that the ferocious beasts in the valley were all high-level ferocious beasts, and their strength was comparable to a 10th phase sword warrior. However, in front of Chu Mu and the other 2, they were no different than ants. "Ha! I found the dagger." Suddenly, an uncontrollable sound of ecstasy exploded like thunder, immediately attracting everyone's attention. Even Chu Mu and the others looked in the direction of the sound. Then, the 3 of them looked at each other. "Let's go," Luo Yufeng shouted in a low voice. Although the dagger was found by someone else, it did not mean that they could not take it. The 3 of them turned into 3 arrows and shot out with a swoosh, sweeping up the grass on the ground. At the same time, a figure shot out from the front like an arrow, making Chu Mu and the other 2 squint their eyes. They saw a circle of red light around his body. "Stop, hand over the dagger." Immediately after, several figures flew over at an extremely fast speed, making the air vibrate. Some of them even pulled out their swords, sending out waves of sword chi that cut through the air. The grass on the ground was torn apart, leaving a long mark. The man who was running away with the dagger hurriedly dodged, but his speed was slightly reduced. He was immediately caught up and surrounded. "What are you doing? I found this dagger. If you have the ability, go find it yourself." The man who was holding the 30-centimeter-long dagger in his right hand shouted with a face full of anger. The sword chi around his body fluctuated violently, as if he was going to fight for his life. "Yes, you found it. Unfortunately, you do not have the strength to protect it. Hand over the dagger obediently. Otherwise, don't blame us for being merciless." 7 people formed a circle, and the leader sneered, pointing his fake sword at the man with a cold face. As for Chu Mu and the other 2 who were standing not far away, they were directly ignored. The person holding the short sword was at the peak of 10th stage sword chi. Of the 7 people surrounding him, 6 were at the peak of 10th stage, and 1 was at the late 10th stage. With such cultivation, it was no wonder that they could ignore Chu Mu and the others. After all, among Chu Mu's group of 3, 1 was at the half-step chi transformation stage, 1 was at the peak of the 10th stage, and 1 was at the late 10th stage. Although ordinary half-step chi transformation stage cultivators were powerful, they were no match for several peak 10th stage cultivators. Do you want the dagger or do you want your life? Make your choice. I'll count to 3. As soon as he finished speaking, he began to count. 1, 2, wait, I'll give it to you. The person who was holding the short sword exerted force in his right hand, causing his veins to bulge. Soon after, he loosened his grip and spoke with a face full of anger and helplessness. "That's right." The leader of the group smiled and nodded. He stretched out his left hand and said, "Throw the dagger over." "Okay, you take it." The peak 10th stage swordsman rolled his eyes and threw the dagger in the direction of Chu Mu's group. The dagger was extremely fast, like a hidden weapon flying over. Not only did it surprise the 7 people, but it also surprised Chu Mu's group. "Bastard!" The leader of the group cursed and hurriedly used his movement technique to rush out. His hand formed a claw to grab the dagger, but the dagger shot toward Jing Xiu Ran instead. Jing Xiu Ran's eyes flashed. He reached out and grabbed the dagger, which was emitting a red glow. Damn it, hand over the dagger immediately. Otherwise, don't blame my sword for being merciless. The leader's face darkened. His eyes glowed with the light of a vicious wolf as he stared at Jing Xiuran. The other 6 people also moved and appeared beside him. They lined up in a row and faced Chu Mu's group. Their auras surged forward to suppress them. The 10th phase peak swordsman who started all of this clenched his teeth. With some reluctance, he executed his movement technique and quickly fled. What a joke! The dagger flew over and landed in our hands. How can we hand it over? Luo Yufeng said with a faint smile. Looks like you're planning to attack, the leader of the group said coldly. His expression was extremely gloomy, like the bottom of a pot. Sword chi flowed through his meridians, and his aura surged violently. Let's attack then. Jing Xiuran put the dagger on his waist and held the hilt with his right hand. He looked like he was going to pull it out at any moment. The dagger had not been sharpened, so there was no need to worry about it being cut. Don't think you can be arrogant just because you have a half-step chi transformation cultivator. We're from the Fierce Gale Sword sect. We advise you to obediently hand over the dagger. Otherwise, the leader of the group threatened again. If he could get the dagger through threats, it would be even better. Fierce Gale Sword sect. Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran's expressions were slightly startled. Their pupils trembled and flashed with a bit of fear. They were a bit hesitant. Subconsciously, the 2 of them simultaneously looked at Chu Mu. If you can take one of my attacks, the dagger will be yours. If you can't, then leave. Chu Mu looked at the 7 people and his gaze fell on the leader of the group. Although 6 of them were at the peak of 10th stage, this person's aura was the strongest. It was not inferior to Guo Chengji's aura. The 7 people from the Fierce Gale Sword sect looked at each other with astonishment. They even looked at Chu Mu as if they were looking at an idiot. I remember now. You're that Chu Mu from the Qingfeng courtyard. Do you think you're amazing just because you defeated Song Guangtao? Let me tell you, Song Guangtao is nothing in my eyes, the leader of the 7 swordsmen from the Fierce Gale Sword sect said with a cold smile and some disdain after he came to a realization. My junior brother's words are our decision. Luo Yufeng said. Jing Xiuran also nodded. Good. Since it's like this, then take out your sword. Let me see the strength of a so-called genius like you. The Fierce Wind Sword sect's leader raised his head and sneered. He pointed his sword at Chu Mu with a threatening aura. On the tip of his sword, there was a sliver of sword aura that fluctuated. Sword aura surged in all directions and exploded like a storm, bringing with it a bit of gloominess. With an ear-piercing clang, everyone only saw a faint, needle-like golden light flash before their eyes and disappear into the void. However, they felt a chill all over their bodies. It was as if they had been locked onto by an extreme sharpness that wanted to cut them in half. The chill seeped into their bones and souls, causing their bodies to involuntarily tremble. The leader of the group of 7 shuddered. His heart unconsciously skipped a beat as he felt a chill run down his spine. His expression changed drastically. He only had time to form an armor in front of him with his sword chi and the fake sword in front of him. Immediately, he felt an extremely powerful sharpness shoot out from the void. It was as thin as a needle, but it was resplendent in a golden arc. It cut through the fake sword and the sword chi armor. With a cracking sound, the fake sword trembled. A wave of power shook his hand, causing him to feel a wave of pain. The fake sword flew out of his hand, and the sword chi armor in front of him was instantly cut into pieces. The terrifying sharpness cut into his body, causing him to retreat 7 or 8 steps before falling on his butt. His face turned green, then red, then white. He was so ashamed that he wanted to dig a hole and bury himself in it. He did not know that Chu Mu had not integrated the concept of gold into his sword, nor had he used his full strength. Otherwise, he would not have fallen on his butt, but would have been killed. Senior brother, are you all right? The other 6 people were shocked and quickly shouted, "Let's go!" This person hatefully stared at Chu Mu for a while, then looked at the short sword at Jing Xiuran's waist. He said hatefully, picked up the fake sword, turned around and walked away. The other 6 people looked at each other, then looked at Chu Mu and the others. They were a bit unwilling, but they still followed him and left. The 10th phase peak sword artist in the distance originally wanted to let the 2 sides fight and take advantage of the situation. However, this result was out of his expectations, and he could not do anything about it. He could only leave hatefully. "Junior brother, here's the short sword." Jing Xiuran pulled out the short sword and handed it to Chu Mu. "Junior brother, you are the strongest out of the 3 of us. It's safest to leave the short sword with you," Luo Yufeng said. "Okay." Chu Mu did not decline. He took the short sword and put it on his waist. In fact, he could have put it in his spatial bracelet. However, it was best not to let anyone know about the spatial bracelet other than himself. Because of the short sword, Chu Mu's body was instantly enveloped in a circle of red light, as if it was surrounding him. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 152. The red light was bright. Although it was only 1 meter in radius, it still made Chu Mu look like a low-power light bulb. To the swordsman, it was quite conspicuous. 3 figures moved quickly in the valley forest. They had already rushed out of the forest and came to an open ground. There were countless pebbles on the ground, big and small. Not far away, there was a clear stream flowing by, bringing with it the desolation of autumn. "Let's go ahead and clean up a little," Luo Yufeng said. Previously, when they rushed through the forest and killed many fierce beasts, some blood splashed on their bodies. "Okay." Chu Mu nodded. The 3 of them quickly flew to the stream not far away. The stream was about 1/2 meter deep and 3 meters wide. The water was a little cold. Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran put their fake swords aside and squatted by the stream to wash the blood on their arms and neck. As for Chu Mu, he would not let the blood splash on his body at all, so there was no need to wash. Suddenly, his pupils shrank slightly. He only saw that the clear stream was flowing by, and there were traces of scarlet that gradually spread out. Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran also noticed at the same time. Suddenly, their expressions changed slightly. They took 2 steps back, grabbed their fake swords, and quickly swept around. "It seems that there are casualties over there. I don't know if they are people or fierce beasts," Luo Yufeng whispered. Just as his voice fell, in front of their line of sight, figures appeared. They quickly leaped toward them, their speed was extremely fast, and there were bursts of wind sounds. "There's a red light!" A loud shout exploded. "They have a short sword!" This voice was a little surprised. "Chase, don't let them escape." Immediately, those people's speed became faster, as if they did not care about the consumption of sword chi. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. They were like stars bouncing. In a flash, they quickly approached. "Junior brother, let's go." Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran's expressions suddenly changed. There were many people coming, many more than them. Moreover, the aura they emitted was quite strong, making the 2 of them afraid. "No need," Chu Mu replied softly. He had already seen the person's face clearly, and there was a trace of killing intent in his eyes. Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran were startled. They put down their feet and their gazes became firm. They stood on the left and right sides of Chu Mu and faced the people who were rushing towards them. Only then did they clearly see who they were. "So it's the 3 of you. Your luck is not bad. However, Chu Mu, obediently leave behind your short sword, hand over your fake sword, kneel down and kowtow 3 times. Then we will spare your life. Otherwise, don't blame us for being merciless." The newcomers were Song Guangtao, Song Xinyang, and the others. The one who spoke was Song Guangtao. This time, in Qinglong Academy, there were 4 people who had entered the top 100. They were the eldest brother, Song Guangtao, the second brother, Li Ji, the third brother, Yan Ming, and the fourth brother, Wang Kuei. The four of them formed a team with Song Xinyang and three other juniors of Song Xinyang. Even among the juniors of the same sect, there was fierce competition. Those who got along would naturally form a team, and those who did not get along would have to separate. This formed a kind of competition, so as to avoid conflicts once they found a short sword or something. A loser is not afraid of biting his tongue, Chu Mu said faintly, which made Song Guangtao's face change. His eyes were gloomy and anger emerged. Chu Mu, don't show off your eloquence. Obediently hand over your short sword, Song Xinyang said coldly, full of confidence. On their side, he and Song Guangtao had both advanced to the half-step Qi transformation stage. Moreover, he was more powerful than Song Guangtao. In addition, there were 3 at the peak of the 10th stage and 3 at the late stage of the 10th stage. In terms of overall strength, they were above the other party. Even if Chu Mu was powerful, it was impossible for him to be the opponent of 2 half-step Qi transformation stage cultivators. With this thought in mind, he was not afraid at all. He had the idea of controlling Chu Mu and the other 2. That's right. Obediently hand over your short sword and kowtow. Song Guangtao said gloomily. The others all stared at Chu Mu and the other 2. Their auras were pressuring and threatening. In an instant, Chu Mu replied and unsheathed his sword with lightning speed. A clanging sound rang out as a needle-like golden light cut through the air and slashed toward Song Xinyang and the others from 10 meters away. This sword was too fast, too fierce. Song Xinyang, Song Guangtao, and the others had not expected that Chu Mu would brazenly unsheathe his sword in such a disadvantageous situation. Their expressions changed greatly, and they all used their movement techniques to rapidly retreat. At the same time, sword qi surged out and condensed into armor in front of them. His gold-tipped sword art had reached perfection and his cultivation had advanced to the late stage of the 10th stage. Chu Mu no longer needed to make any obvious preparations to use gold-tip space rend. He could use it as soon as he unsheathed his sword. An astonishingly sharp sword light came from the void. 10 meters away, a dense and dazzling golden light cut through the air like an arc of light. Several miserable cries suddenly rang out. The 3 late-stage 10th stage swordsmen reacted a bit too slowly and their sword qi was not dense enough. They were instantly cut in half and fell to the ground. The cut was smooth and smooth. Organs and muscles squirmed and contracted as large amounts of blood spurted out. The 3 peak 10th stage swordsmen were all injured. Their arms and abdomen were all bleeding and their faces were pale. Song Guangtao and Song Xinyang's cultivation had reached half-step qi transformation. Their reactions were extremely fast and their sword qi was dense. They blocked the edge of the gold-tip space rend and quickly retreated. The 5 looked at the 6 halves of the corpse and the organs and blood flowing all over the ground. Their cheeks twitched and their faces became even paler. Their eyes were filled with shock. "Damn it, kill him!" Song Guangtao screamed. His voice was comparable to that of the emperor's favorite. Sword qi surged violently and stirred up a strong wind. Swords were unsheathed as the 5 spread out and used their strongest killing moves to kill Chu Mu. "Junior brother, go!" Luo Yufeng's expression changed greatly. He rushed to the left and pulled out his sword. His killing move was like a violent gust of wind, causing the cobblestones on the ground to roll. Jing Xiuran rushed to the right. His sword vibrated and turned into a violent flaming python. It opened its mouth and bit at Song Guangtao and the others. A terrifying sword qi burst out, shattering the cobblestones on the ground into powder. Dust and smoke filled the air, and the killing intent was so cold that it made one's heart tremble. Under the 5 killing intents, Chu Mu felt his hair stand on end. The killing moves of 2 half-step qi transformation cultivators and 3 peak 10th stage swordsmen were too powerful. His body changed, swaying left and right like a willow swaying in the wind. After a dozen times, he found a flaw. In an instant, he used his high-grade movement technique, swift shadow, and with a whoosh, he shot out from the side, leaving behind a few afterimages. He directly escaped the killing move. The 5 killing moves were extremely sharp. They either attacked in one direction or covered a small area. Countless cobblestones instantly turned to dust and collided with each other, creating ear-piercing rumbles like 10,000 horses galloping. Countless sword chis collided and mixed together, turning into a surging hurricane that rushed out, sweeping up countless complete or broken pebbles. Like a giant electric drill, they drilled into the stream, causing the stream to become turbid and water to soar into the sky. Chu Mu twisted his body in midair, and turned around to slash out. The great wind shaking the forest had been infused with 30% of the concept of wind, increasing its power by 3 times. The great wind turned into a howling storm and endless roars could be heard. This power far surpassed the sky-splitting golden edge. The killing intent contained within was shockingly dense, causing one's scalp to go numb and their body to unconsciously tremble. Even though Chu Mu had limited the range of this killing move, Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran were still shocked. They had also practiced the Great Wind sword art for half a year. However, compared to Chu Mu, they were much weaker. Originally, they had thought that it was just a small difference. But now they realized that it was not just a small difference, but a difference of several times. Song Xinyang and Song Guangtao's sword chi exploded as they once again performed their killing moves. They rushed out and clashed with each other. They borrowed the force of the collision and retreated while using their movement techniques to escape. Those 3 10th phase peak sword artists were directly killed by Chu Mu's great wind shaking the forest and Luo Yufeng's and Jing Xiuran's swords. Want to escape? Chu Mu snorted coldly as he performed the sweeping wind shadow again, infusing it with 30% of the concept of wind. His speed was unbelievably fast. In a flash, he had crossed dozens of meters and appeared directly behind Song Guangtao and Song Xinyang. The two could only feel a killing intent coming from behind them. Their pupils violently trembled as sword chi rumbled and condensed into armor on their backs in an attempt to block. However, Chu Mu's figure strangely turned like a wind spirit. It was the combination of the sweeping wind shadow and wind travel. He appeared in front of Song Xinyang and Song Guangtao like a ghost and slashed out with the fake clear wind sword. With 30% of the concept of wind, Chu Mu's sword speed increased dramatically. In the blink of an eye, he had slashed out dozens of times, dazzling everyone. Song Xinyang and Song Guangtao could only subconsciously twist their heads and shake their bodies to dodge. They suddenly felt a tearing pain in their throats that spread throughout their bodies. Their bodies quickly became powerless as they fell forward. There seemed to be a scarlet color flashing in front of their eyes before they gradually lost their consciousness. In terms of cultivation, they were indeed better than Chu Mu. However, in terms of life and death battle experience, they were far behind Chu Mu. Junior brother, they're all dead. Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran flew over with faces full of shock. Their words were stuttering as they were shocked by Chu Mu's terrifying strength. They thought that they had overestimated Chu Mu's strength as much as possible. They did not expect that even 2 half-step chi transformation cultivators would be easily killed by Chu Mu. Yes. Chu Mu nodded. He was not surprised at all. This was a matter of course. He had the realm of a swordsmanship master, 3 concepts, and the beginner level of sword momentum. With all kinds of means, Song Xinyang and Song Guangtao were just ordinary half-step chi transformation cultivators. If he could not kill them, he could just kill himself. Song Guangtao and the others are dead. The remaining few from Qinglan Courtyard are nothing to worry about. Luo Yufeng adjusted and sneered. Qingfeng Courtyard and Qinglan Courtyard had always been at odds. However, Qingfeng Courtyard was often the weaker one. This time, because of Chu Mu, Qinglan Courtyard was suppressed. Jing Xiuran also nodded. Chu Mu did not say anything, but his mind turned. the matter of Qinglan sword sect has come to an end. From now on, I just have to wait for my cultivation to improve. At least, I have to reach the level of qi transformation to Shang. The next thing we need to deal with is the matter of Wang Lin and Lin Luoshui. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 153. 8 People, 8 Pseudo-Swords. There were no qi-boosting pills or manuals, only some great qi recovery pills and great blood-staunching pills. In short, they were 8 poor people. Chu Mu did not bring many pseudo-swords this time. Of the 8 pseudo-swords, he carried 2 on his back and the remaining 6 were split between Luo Yufeng and Jing Shuran. Perhaps to a high-grade sword faction, 8 pseudo-swords were nothing, but to a low-grade sword faction, 8 pseudo-swords were extraordinarily valuable. Ignoring the 8 corpses, the 3 of them continued forward. Dali Valley was specially developed by the Li State Sword Academy as a venue for the top 100 battles. It covered a large area, with forests, rivers, swamps, and other terrains. There were also many fierce beasts inside. These fierce beasts were basically high-level fierce beasts and were very powerful. Naturally, they multiplied and gradually increased in number. This valley was also regarded by the fierce beasts as their habitat. Swordsmen who entered the valley would naturally be regarded as intruders by the fierce beasts. Once swordsmen and fierce beasts met, a life-and-death battle would often break out. The end result was either the fierce beasts being killed or the swordsmen being killed and becoming food for the fierce beasts. Kill! Jing Shuran growled. His sword was like flowing fire, sending sparks flying as he killed the fierce beasts that pounced on him. Around them, there were 7 or 8 corpses of fierce beasts that had died under the swords of Chu Mu and Luo Yufeng. Junior brother, I need to recover my sword qi, Luo Yufeng said. He took out a few great qi recovery pills and threw them into his mouth. He immediately sat down cross-legged, and so did Jing Shuran. They had been in the valley for more than half a day and had gone through several battles. The sword qi in their dantian was basically depleted. If they did not recover soon, they would not be able to recover much of their strength if they encountered another battle later. In comparison, Chu Mu still had more than half of his sword qi left. He also took out a few great qi recovery pills and threw them into his mouth. However, he did not sit down cross-legged. Instead, he let the pills dissolve and recover naturally. Although there were better pills, qi recovery pills, they were used to recover innate sword qi. Taking them now was a waste. Time passed slowly. In the distance, some overlapping figures appeared and were rapidly approaching. Chu Mu frowned slightly. He naturally knew about the red light on his body. Once it was seen by others, it would be troublesome. Soon after, a glint of surprise flashed through his eyes. This was because he saw that among the figures that were rapidly approaching from afar, there were actually 2 that were emitting red light, just like him. 2 short swords. Chu Mu muttered in a voice that only he could hear. Then, his heart moved, and his pupils flashed with a bright light. There were 3 of them, so they needed 3 short swords. Now that they already had 1, they needed 2 more. After that, they just needed to guard the short swords and wait until the end of the top 100 battles. Immediately after, Chu Mu creased his eyebrows because he recognized the group of people. They were from the Crown Prince's courtyard. The one in the lead had a cold and arrogant expression. Wasn't that the Crown Prince, Zhou Hongyu? Chu Mu immediately thought of retreating. Not only was Zhou Hongyu in the Qi transformation realm, but he had also comprehended the Qi transformation realm. He was definitely very powerful. Chu Mu wasn't confident that he could defeat him. Even if he could, it would take a long time and use all of his method. Zhou Hongyu had 3 half-step Qi transformation realm cultivators and 5 peak 10th phase cultivators with him. It would be too easy for such a team to kill Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran. However, Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran weren't finished yet. Chu Mu's eyes flashed with a hint of anxiety. Crown Prince, he is Chu Mu. Previously, we went to recruit him under the Crown Prince's orders. Unexpectedly, he was so arrogant that he refused the Crown Prince's invitation," said one of the peak 10th phase cultivators. It was Zhou Ziming who had gone to recruit Chu Mu. After failing to recruit him, he had found a dozen disciples from other sword sects to provoke Chu Mu. Unexpectedly, they had all been defeated by Chu Mu. Helpless, he had no other choice but to leave the matter unsettled. However, he hadn't let it go. He had been thinking about how to get revenge. Finally, he found an opportunity to sow discord in front of the Crown Prince. As he spoke, he proudly glanced at Chu Mu. His eyes seemed to say, "I can't do anything to you, but can the Crown Prince not do anything to you?" As expected, Zhou Hongyu's gaze slowly fell on Chu Mu's face. Zhou Hongyu was the Crown Prince. He had been born with a golden spoon in his mouth. His status was noble, and his cultivation talent was extraordinary. Others had always obeyed his words. Who would dare to disobey him? Especially when it came to someone whose status and strength were far inferior to his. A short sword. Your luck is pretty good. If you deliver the short sword to me, I won't bicker with you about going against me. Zhou Hongyu's eyes narrowed slightly. His arrogance was awe-inspiring. He spoke neither slowly nor quickly. There was a kind of arrogance in his voice, as if he was in control of life and death. This kind of temperament was not something an ordinary silk pants could compare with. Chu Mu's eyebrows twitched. He knew that today's matter would be difficult to resolve. However, it was impossible for him to hand over the short sword. At this time, Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran's sword qi recovered. When they opened their eyes, they saw the scene in front of them. When they recognized Zhou Hongyu, they were immediately shocked and incomparably fearful. "Junior brother." They walked to Chu Mu's side and whispered, "Senior brothers, you should leave this place immediately." Chu Mu's lips trembled slightly. Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran heard this at the same time, but Zhou Hongyu and the others didn't hear it. Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran were slightly startled. They immediately retreated decisively and used their movement techniques to quickly leave. They were not wishy-washy people. They knew very well that in the face of Zhou Hongyu, one of the 4 heroes of the Sword Academy, staying would only make Chu Mu's hands and feet tied. It was better to leave immediately before Chu Mu spoke, so that Chu Mu wouldn't have any worries. Zhou Hongyu didn't even look at Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran's actions. He directly ignored them. Since Zhou Hongyu didn't speak, his subordinates naturally had to remain silent. It was as if 9 wolves were facing a lamb. "I just happen to lack 2 short swords. Give me your 2 short swords." After Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran were far away, Chu Mu finally spoke. He spoke neither slowly nor quickly, with an extraordinary temperament. "Your cultivation is not high, but your tone is not small." Zhou Hongyu's eyes narrowed slightly. A fierce light shot out from his eyes. The air seemed to be solidified, making people feel even more oppressed. "Crown Prince, this person is very stubborn and arrogant. He won't cry until he sees the coffin." Zhou Ziming immediately added, "Right, I heard that he has some relationship with Chu He of the Stormy Wave Sword School." "Chu He is Chu He." Zhou Hongyu smiled coldly and said, "Take him down." Although Chu Mu's toughness surprised Zhou Hongyu, a mere late 10th phase swordsman was not worthy of his attention. If he personally took action, it would be beneath his status. "Chu Mu, don't think that you can be arrogant just because you have some skills. Obediently hand over your short swords. Otherwise, it won't be nice to see blood." Zhou Ziming smiled coldly. He slowly pulled out his sword and walked towards Chu Mu. In addition, the other peak 10th phase swordsmen also walked over, forming a circle. Chu Mu was unmoved. His mind was spinning rapidly. He was not confident that he could fight against so many people, especially one who had comprehended the essence of the Qi transformation realm. It seemed that he could only take them by surprise and escape. The 5-peak 10th phase swordsmen were also very experienced. They surrounded Chu Mu from all directions, cutting off his escape route. However, they did not know Chu Mu's ability. In a flash, Chu Mu pulled out his sword and attacked first, directly using the wind shaking the forest. The wind blew, making rustling sounds. However, Chu Mu did not use the essence of wind, because once he used it, Zhou Hongyu would most likely be able to see through it. After using the killing move, Chu Mu stabbed his sword towards Zhou Ziming. The sword was as fast as lightning, producing a sharp tearing sound in the air. The violent killing intent surged, and the terrifying sharpness made Zhou Ziming's hair stand on end. His expression changed greatly. He only felt that his movements were affected. His whole body felt numb under the impact of the killing intent and sharpness. He could only barely channel his sword chi to attack. Unexpectedly, Chu Mu only made a feint. He knocked away Zhou Ziming's fake sword and turned into a gust of wind, leaving behind an afterimage as he quickly disappeared into the distance. Air! A half-step chi transformation realm cultivator was startled and hurriedly called out. No need to chase, Zhou Hongyu said. Staring at Chu Mu's departing figure, a trace of interest flashed through his eyes. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 154. Like a gust of wind, a light green wind blew in all directions. A figure emitting red light flew past and stopped in front of a forest. Looking around, Chu Mu didn't see anyone else, nor did he feel any aura. Chu Mu let out a sigh of relief and took out a few large chi recovery pills and threw them into his mouth. After they dissolved, they automatically circulated and began to recover his sword chi. Out of his expectations, Zhou Hongyu didn't chase after him. However, Chu Mu didn't think too much about it. He didn't know what Zhou Hongyu was thinking, so there was no need to rack his brains. Chu Mu was now thinking about whether or not to put the short sword at his waist into the spatial bracelet. Although the space inside the bracelet was only about 1 cubic meter, it was difficult to put a fake sword inside. However, a 30-centimeter long short sword wasn't a problem. After thinking for a few seconds, Chu Mu put the short sword into the spatial bracelet. There were advantages and disadvantages to doing this, but for now, there were more advantages. I wonder where senior brother and senior brother went? Chu Mu said to himself. He only hoped that the two of them would be able to live well. The large chi recovery pills effect was fully activated, and his sword chi had recovered quite a bit. Chu Mu looked ahead and took large strides into the forest. This forest was different from the previous one. The trees were taller and the leaves were denser. As a result, the light in the forest was much dimmer than outside, and there was a trace of cold air surrounding it. Without Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran, Chu Mu had nothing to worry about. Suddenly, Chu Mu's ears twitched. He heard a sound coming from ahead. It was the sound of people talking, but because it was too far away, he couldn't hear what they were saying. He increased his speed and used wind swim, becoming silent as he moved forward. Senior Brother Guo, according to your experience, why haven't we found a single short sword? Wang Lin frowned and said with a bit of dissatisfaction. Junior brother, I already said that finding a short sword requires a bit of luck. Guo Qingji also frowned and replied. Other than the two of them, there were 2 other 10th phase peak swordsmen. They were all disciples of the Shangshuan sword sect. Humph, I didn't find the dagger, and neither did Chu Mu. Wang Lin also understood, but he still felt unhappy. There was a stifling feeling in his heart, and an evil fire was burning within him. Junior brother, don't worry. Even if you can't find the short sword, you'll still have a chance to challenge those who have obtained the short sword after the competition. If you win, you'll still be able to enter the top 100. Guo Qingji said, with our strength, I believe it won't be difficult for us to challenge 1 or 2 of the weaker ones. As for Chu Mu, it'll be great if we can meet him, but if we don't, we still have a chance. You have no chance. A voice was heard. Immediately after, a figure appeared in front of Wang Lin, Guo Qingji, and the others like a gust of wind. Chu Mu, it's actually you. Wang Lin and Guo Qingji were both shocked and immediately screamed. Then, their faces were filled with ecstasy. I was worried about where to find you and make you pay with your life. I didn't expect you to come to me on your own accord. Very good, I'll cut off your head to comfort my second brother's soul in heaven. Wang Lin's eyebrows were raised, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. His face was filled with hatred, and he wanted nothing more than to skin Chu Mu and crush his bones. He held the sword hilt with one hand and slowly pulled out the fake sword. A shocking killing intent condensed and spread out, and the sword light flickered. Guo Qingji also pulled out his sword. He was at the half-step chi transformation stage and was very powerful. He pointed his sword at Chu Mu. The 4-inch sword light was like a poisonous snake spitting out its tongue, and a frightening sharpness forced its way into the void. The other 2 10th phase peak swordsmen quickly moved and separated to the left and right, cutting off the path behind Chu Mu. They pulled out their swords and pointed them at Chu Mu. The 3-inch sword light flickered, and the sharpness locked onto Chu Mu. Chu Mu, did you think today's ending would be like this? Wang Lin's voice became colder and colder. The tip of the sword he pointed at Chu Mu emitted a terrifying sword light that pierced through the air. You've been an obsession for a long time. It's time to end it, Chu Mu said indifferently as he slowly pulled out the fake clear wind sword. As the sword was pulled out, a wisp of light flashed. Chu Mu's body was surrounded by gusts of wind, causing Chu Mu's black hair and clothes to flutter. It was as if he was about to fly into the sky. Suddenly, Wang Lin and Guo Qingji only saw a flash of green in front of their eyes. 2 extremely sharp killing intent slashed at them, causing their hair to stand on end. They hurriedly attacked, sending out a dozen or so sword chi as they quickly retreated. With a flash of green, Chu Mu's body twisted in midair. The fake clear wind sword carried a shocking killing intent as it instantly slashed through the throats of the 2 10th phase peak swordsmen. This sword was not only sudden, but also extremely fast. There was no obstruction at all. These 2 Shang-Xian sword sect disciples originally had a bright future ahead of them. But now, they had lost their lives without knowing how they died. They didn't even have the chance to use their strength. Catching them off guard, Chu Mu killed the 2 of them. Then, he turned around and condensed the wind into a 2-meter-long wind blade. The kill of the clear wind tore through the void. You actually killed our sect's disciples. Guo Qingji and Wang Lin's expressions changed. They immediately used their movement techniques to dodge the kill of the clear wind and used their killing move. Guo Qingji practiced a wind attribute sword art. His killing move was like a tornado, creating a loud rumbling sound. The rocks on the ground were all swept up and crushed by the sword chi, making the tornado even more powerful. Wang Lin cultivated in water-type sword technique. Sword chi was released from all over his body and was used as a killing move. Waves surged like a flood breaking through a dam, creating loud rumbling sounds. It was as if the impact was going to drown the surroundings. The 2 attacked with all their strength, not holding back at all. They wanted to kill Chu Mu. As disciples of the Shang-Xian sword sect, they had an extraordinary background and talent. Guo Qingji's strength was clearly much higher than Luo Yufeng's, and Wang Lin's talent was even higher. He wasn't inferior to Guo Qingji's. If the 2 of them attacked with all their strength, even a half-step chi transformation expert would have to die on the spot. However, Chu Mu directly charged into Guo Qingji's tornado as if he was walking into a trap. While Guo Qingji and Wang Lin were puzzled, they both sneered at the same time. Under the effect of 30% wind concept, Guo Qingji felt as if the sword in his hand had encountered some sort of invisible resistance. It paused slightly, and the powerful and terrifying tornado also paused for an instant, vaguely having a feeling of collapse. Chu Mu directly charged into the tornado, and continuously slashed with the fake clear wind sword, directly cutting the tornado apart. Countless gusts of wind blew, and Chu Mu's speed suddenly increased. His sword came from the west, brazenly stabbing toward Guo Qingji. Guo Qingji's expression changed greatly. He was extremely shocked. His pupils rapidly contracted, and his eyes were filled with an astonishingly fierce cold light. He attacked with a murderous aura. It was unbelievably fast, and Guo Qingji was unable to react for a moment. He could only instinctively fly back. Wang Lin was also shocked. He didn't think that Chu Mu would be so terrifying. Even his senior brother Guo's killing move couldn't do anything to him. Instead, it was broken and turned into a supporting force. He hurriedly shook his body, and the sword light changed. His killing move was endless, like a torrential flood, once again rushing toward Chu Mu. His water-type swordsmanship had limited lethality in an instant. What he focused on was continuous attacks. Once one was hit, the initial damage would not be great. However, after being hit continuously, the damage would rapidly increase until one died. It was extremely terrifying. Behind him, an endless torrential flood was surging. Under the compression of the air, Chu Mu's speed didn't decrease, but instead increased. He tore through the sky, approaching Guo Qingji at a frightening speed. Guo Qingji also reacted. While retreating, he hurriedly waved his sword. Waves of sword qi were shot out, densely packed like a storm. Chu Mu flicked his wrist, and the fake clear wind sword made a swishing sound. The sword light shattered the sword qi, and the sound of explosions continued. The surrounding air shook, and the airflow became chaotic. This allowed Chu Mu to borrow the momentum and increase his speed once again. The tip of the sword had already reached Guo Qingji's throat. Guo Qingji could even clearly feel the terrifying aura coming from the tip of the sword. The pores on his throat exploded, and goosebumps appeared all over his body. Die! Chu Mu let out a low roar. The sword qi around him surged, condensing into two wind blades. Guo Qingji was shocked, and hurriedly waved his sword to shatter the two sword qi. At the same time, Chu Mu's speed suddenly increased, and the sword light pierced right into Guo Qingji's throat. Then, Chu Mu's body turned and he quickly moved to the side. The water sword arts behind him couldn't be stopped, and directly bombarded Guo Qingji's body. Guo Qingji was like a person being hit by a flood. He crashed into a tree and his eyes turned white. The fake sword fell from his hand. Brother Guo! Wang Lin's pupils dilated. He didn't expect this to happen. Then, he felt a horrifying killing intent coming from behind him. It made his hair stand on end, and his scalp was about to explode. He forcefully reversed the sword qi and moved to the side. Waves of tearing pain came from his meridians, but the killing intent behind him was like a maggot that locked onto him. Don't even think about killing me. Wang Lin was ruthless. He forcefully turned around and used his killing move again. His sword turned into a flood and smashed a tree in front of him, but there was no one there. His pupils shrank, and a wisp of Xiantian sword qi was about to be released from his dantian. It moved through his meridians, and he was ready to kill Chu Mu at any time. Go down and accompany Wang Qi. A strange voice sounded in his ears. It was like the sigh of the Grim Reaper. He didn't have time to react, and he didn't even have time to use his Xiantian sword qi. Wang Lin only felt a chill on his neck. With a gentle touch, he heard the sound of his skin being cut open and blood spurting out. His vision became blurry, and he vaguely saw a smear of blood. His body gradually lost its strength, and he couldn't hold onto his sword anymore. The sword fell to the ground with a clang and he fell to the side. His limbs were still twitching, and he stared blankly at the sky as if he was questioning something. Shaking off the blood on his sword, Chu Mu sheathed his sword. He lowered his head and looked at Wang Lin's corpse. He didn't say a word, but he felt as if something in his soul had scattered. There was an indescribable feeling. It was as if some filth had been removed, and it became clear again. It's still not enough. The first obsession has been resolved, but there's still the second. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidien. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 155. The sword light was like flowing water, rushing forward, causing sand and stones to roll. A figure flashed, moving left and right, avoiding the flowing sword light. He slashed out with his sword, causing the sword chi to fly across the sky and explode, letting out a muffled groan. I've already said, you're not my opponent. A somewhat evil voice sounded. The triangular-eyed youth did not hide the strong possessiveness in his eyes. He stared at the girl in front of him and said excitedly. Lin Luoshui was so scared that her face turned pale. Her face was filled with fear. She covered her chest with one hand. Although she did not expose herself, she subconsciously did so to make herself feel more at ease. The other hand held the fake sword tightly and slowly retreated step by step. Her eyes moved slightly, looking for an opportunity to escape. She was not as nervous as she looked on the surface. Don't come over, or I'll kill you, Lin Luoshui said in a trembling voice while looking for an opportunity to escape. However, her eyes did not change much. Kill me? You want to kill me with your mere late 10th phase cultivation? What a joke. The triangular-eyed youth sneered. He was a half-step chi transformation cultivator, and not an ordinary one. If it were not for this girl's beauty, he would have killed her already. If you come any closer, I'll kill myself. Lin Luoshui was a bit anxious. Her right hand moved, and the fake sword was placed directly on her neck. Don't kill yourself. The triangular-eyed youth was also anxious and quickly stopped. He had not enjoyed the beauty yet. How could he die? He did not have the hobby of playing with corpses. His voice became gentle. Little beauty, let me tell you, I'm a disciple of the Stormy Wave Sword sect. I'm a half-step chi transformation cultivator, and my future is limitless. If you follow me, I promise you won't lose out. Lin Luoshui was startled when she heard this. Her pupils trembled slightly, and she seemed to be a bit tempted. I have some authority among the disciples of the Stormy Wave Sword sect. As long as you follow me, when the time comes, you won't be lacking in benefits. The triangular-eyed man was very experienced. As soon as he saw Lin Luoshui's eyes, he knew that this woman was a little moved. Before I agree, you have to do something for me. After you do it, I will give it to you with all my heart. Otherwise, I will kill myself so that you won't get anything, Lin Luoshui said hatefully. He's one of the two people you want me to kill? The triangular-eyed man pointed at a person in front of him and turned to look at Lin Luoshui. That's right, he's one of them. Lin Luoshui's voice was filled with hatred. Ever since she was abandoned by Wang Lin, she was filled with resentment towards him. She swore that she would make Wang Lin pay a heavy price. Later, when she went to find Chu Mu, she was treated coldly by Chu Mu. However, regardless of whether it was Wang Lin or Chu Mu, they were both stronger than her. If she wanted to take revenge, she couldn't do it on her own. She could only rely on external forces. Only a late-stage 10th-level warrior. Watch me kill him with one sword. The triangular-eyed man sneered and said with disdain. He walked towards Chu Mu with big strides. The second obsession should also be resolved. Chu Mu sighed softly. His eyes were deep, and no one could tell what he was thinking. What are you mumbling about? Are you begging for mercy? Sorry, even if you kneel down and kowtow 30 times, I won't let you go. The triangular-eyed man sneered and slowly pulled out his sword. He suddenly sped up and shot towards Chu Mu like an arrow. His murderous aura was overwhelming, and his sharpness was unparalleled. Before he arrived, his murderous aura was already close to him. His sword chi soared through the sky and attacked. Chu Mu's feet moved slightly. The horrifying sword chi flew past him and chopped into a tree, directly cutting it down. Chu Mu's body flickered. He had integrated 30% of his wind poetic perspective into his movement art. The triangular-eyed man only saw a blur in front of his eyes, and then he suddenly disappeared. He was very experienced in fighting, and his reaction was very fast. He swung his sword, and sword chi shot out across the sky, covering an area of dozens of meters around him. They were densely packed, cutting marks on the ground, and trees were cut down one after another. It was a shocking scene of chaos. Chu Mu's figure strangely appeared a few dozen meters away, nearing Lin Luoshui. Lin Luoshui let out a roar and drew her sword. Her sword was like a torrential stream as it attacked Chu Mu. Lin Luoshui slightly lifted his eyelids, and his pupils shot out a threatening murderous aura. His body flickered, and Lin Luoshui only saw a blur in front of his eyes. He had lost his target, and his face changed drastically. He hurriedly turned around and waved his sword. Sword chi poured out like waves, protecting his whole body. The horrifying sharp light attacked towards Lin Luoshui. A light gold light was extremely dazzling, which made Lin Luoshui's pupils shake. She could not help but squint her eyes. She immediately felt a chill run down her spine, and that aggressive murderous aura penetrated into her whole body. Her bones and soul were numbed, and her whole body was frozen. Then, the sword light paused, and a tearing pain spread throughout her body. Lin Luoshui's face was full of shock, and her eyes were full of disbelief. She looked at Chu Mu in shock, and could only feel that Chu Mu's body was getting more and more blurry. She subconsciously touched her waist, and felt a warm feeling. She put her hand in front of her eyes, and vaguely saw a bright red color on her hand. Then, she gradually lost her consciousness and fell into darkness. Dead. Dead. The triangular-eyed young man's eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at Lin Luoshui's corpse that had been cut in half at the waist. He muttered to himself as his face twitched continuously. After killing Lin Luoshui with one sword attack, Chu Mu suddenly looked at the triangular-eyed man. His eyes were sharp like swords that could pierce through the void. His murderous aura was extremely threatening, which made the triangular-eyed man's heart skip a beat. Wait! The triangular-eyed man suddenly shouted, "The one who wanted to kill you was her, not me. I was only hired by her. Now that she is dead, and we have no grudges against each other, there is no need to continue fighting." As he spoke, the triangular-eyed man stepped back step by step, and quickly pulled away from Chu Mu. As soon as he attacked, he knew that he had underestimated his opponent. This kind of strength was definitely not a normal late 10th phase warrior. Even a peak 10th phase warrior could compete with him. Seeing Chu Mu kill Lin Luoshui with one sword attack so cleanly, the triangular-eyed man made a comparison in his heart. He felt that even if he could kill Chu Mu in the end, he might be wounded. Besides, Lin Luoshui was already dead. Even if he killed Chu Mu, he would not gain any benefit. It was not worth it. Chu Mu's pupils slightly trembled, and he stopped walking. The triangular-eyed man hurriedly sped up, and when he was far enough away, he quickly turned around and used his movement technique to leave, leaving behind a person standing and a corpse that had been chopped in half. Looking at the triangular-eyed man's back, Chu Mu was expressionless. It was not that he wanted to let the triangular-eyed man go, but after killing Lin Luoshui and ending his second obsession, his soul could not help but tremble. A change had occurred and he had to stop walking. At this moment, a strong gust of wind blew over from nowhere. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 156. The sound of wind whistling resounded all around. Gusts of wind came from the void, covering the sky and the earth from afar. It was like an invisible wave was surging in from afar. The trees in the forest were swaying, the leaves were swaying and colliding with each other, making a violent rustling sound. Pieces of fallen leaves danced and spiraled down. Chu Mu seemed to have been struck by a body immobilization technique. He stood in place without moving, but his eyes were abnormally bright. It was as if his pupils had become two small light bulbs that emitted a shocking radiance. Strands of faint green light lingered in his eyes like smoke, yet they also flowed like clear water. Strands of comprehension appeared out of nowhere and surged into his heart. Gusts of wind blew over from afar. When it blew past Chu Mu, it was as if it was being pulled by an invisible force. Strands of wind circled around Chu Mu's body, forming strands of light cyan. They were like silk threads that circled around Chu Mu's body. Chu Mu's long black hair fluttered in the wind, and the corners of his long robe rustled. He was like an immortal about to ride the wind. The wind that blew from afar grew stronger and stronger, causing the trees in the surroundings to sway even more violently. The rustling sound actually became somewhat ear-piercing. It was as if there was only the sound of the wind blowing and the swaying of the leaves in the entire world. At this moment, Chu Mu felt that his thoughts were unprecedentedly clear. All of his thoughts were clear and unobstructed, as transparent as a pure crystal, without any flaws. Wang Lin and Lin Luoshui had always been an obsession of Chu Mu. An obsession that had to be resolved. Otherwise, even if his soul was completely merged, there would still be a stain. Even now, Chu Mu didn't really understand the mysteries of the soul, but he knew that the stronger and purer the soul, the greater the benefits. At the very least, in terms of comprehension, there would be something unique about it. Wang Lin was dead. Lin Luoshui was dead. For Chu Mu, this was the most direct and simplest way to end things. The obsession in his soul was gone. Immediately, in this state of clarity, along with the wind that came from nowhere, Chu Mu's unprecedentedly clear and pure soul surged with waves of comprehension. Comprehension of wind, comprehension of wind. As long as there was air, there would be wind. When the airflow formed a flow, it formed a wind. When the airflow slowed down, it formed a breeze. When the airflow accelerated, it formed a gale. Wind was formless, colorless, and tasteless. It could not be seen or touched. One could only feel it through the flow of air. That was only for ordinary people. For those who had comprehended the concept of wind, wind was tangible and colorful. It was an existence that could be seen and touched. The poetic conception of wind was where the mysteries of wind lay. It had been comprehended, understood, and mastered. 10% of the poetic conception was only the surface of the poetic conception. Just touching the poetic conception had a negligible effect on the power of sword art. 10 to 30% was the beginning of the poetic conception. It could already increase the power of sword arts, body techniques, and other related powers. Chu Mu's poetic conception of wind had already reached 30%. Moreover, it had reached the peak of 30%. He was only one step away from breaking through to 40%. However, that one step away was like a layer of invisible film. It was the difference between the beginning and the beginning. It was two completely different levels. The sound of the wind kept ringing. Chu Mu only felt that he was in a sea of wind. Front, back, left, and right, it was all blue wind. It kept blowing. The wind that blew surrounded him. Sometimes it blew from the east, sometimes it blew from the west. Sometimes it blew from the north, and sometimes it blew from the south. Up, down, front, back, left, and right, they were all one entity. The rustling sound was like a surging wave. The wind suddenly became 10 times stronger, causing all the trees in the forest to sway crazily. Looking down from above, one could see the branches and leaves forming wave. In the sky, the white clouds seemed to be affected by the strong wind. They gradually became stronger, turning into a gale. The wind that blew past Chu Mu became increasingly intense. The cyan-colored air current that surrounded Chu Mu became even denser and denser. Chu Mu's body faintly trembled, as if he was being supported by an invisible hand. The soles of his feet slowly left the ground and floated into the air, rising little by little. 1/2 meter, 1 meter, 1.5 meters, 2 meters. Chu Mu's body was fixed 3 meters above the ground, surrounded by the blue airflow. He was like a general in the wind. His right hand held the sword and pointed to the ground. His pupils were filled with blue. Even the whites of his eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of light blue. Casually waving his sword, in an instant, rays of cyan light converged and transformed into a 2-meter-long wind blade that shot out, directly slicing apart the incoming gale. This strike wasn't a sword technique, nor was it a sword technique. It was purely Chu Mu casually waving his sword as he pleased. It was not an internal sword chi or an external sword chi. It was formed by condensing the power of the wind around him. Chu Mu's mind was filled with all kinds of understanding of the mysteries of the wind. He even felt as if he had turned into a gust of wind. As he swung his sword, streaks of green light condensed on the blade and shot out. Streaks of 2-meter-long wind blades sliced through the void and tore through the wind. Wherever they passed, faint green streaks were left behind. The blue wind blades were extremely sharp. They cut through trees like tofu without any resistance. The cut was shockingly smooth. The area that the strong wind affected gradually expanded. It had already spread out of the entire forest and spread to other places in Dali Valley. For a moment it seemed as if the entire valley had been blown by the wind. This wind. Somewhere in Dali Valley, Chu He, who had a ring of red light around him, paused. He looked up at the sky and narrowed his eyes. There seemed to be some kind of mysterious ripple around him. The light in his eyes was reserved, and he was thinking. Then he raised a hand and opened his palm, allowing the wind to blow. He carefully felt the wind blowing through his fingers. Just like him, in other places in Dali Valley, Li Huayu of the Plain Heart Sword Clan, Su Jianfeng of the Shangshuan Sword Clan, and Zhou Hongyu of the State Magistrate's Crown Prince all stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. Their faces were full of doubt and thought. The wind blew without warning. There seemed to be something special about it, but they could not tell what it was. If Ling Tsangyan, the deputy headmaster, was here, he would be able to feel that the wind was caused by the small success of the will. However, if that was the case, Chu Mu's mastery of the will of wind would be exposed. At that time, Ling Tsangyan would definitely know that Chu Mu had mastered 2 wills. Suddenly, the gale paused and dissipated into nothingness, causing Chu He and the others to be stunned and somewhat astonished. They felt that the wind was not normal. It came suddenly and disappeared suddenly. It was as if someone was deliberately controlling it. However, in reality, when the wind blew and dissipated, it wasn't someone who intentionally controlled it. It was all because Chu Mu's obsession had caused his soul to become completely pure. His thoughts were clear and his thoughts were clear. The various wind comprehension and wind comprehension had instantly broken through the last layer of barrier to entering the realm, breaking through to small success. The wind dissipated and the trees gradually stopped swaying. The rustling sound slowly died down. However, Chu Mu was still 3 meters above the ground. His body was still surrounded by wisps of green chi, rapidly rotating. His eyes slowly closed, and the green chi around his body seemed to disappear into the void. Chu Mu's body slowly fell and landed firmly on the ground, motionless like a statue. The fluctuating chi gradually calmed down, and everything returned to normal. The wind from before was just like an illusion. Suddenly, Chu Mu opened his eyes. Green light flowed in his eyes, and a bright light shot out. He casually swung his sword, and a wisp of green light quickly flowed on the fake clear wind sword. It was like a gust of wind blowing towards the tip of the sword. There was a slight chi-la sound, and a 2-meter-long green wind blade slashed out, piercing through the void. The wind blade cut through a tree as thick as an adult's waist. It cut through without any obstruction and disappeared into the distance. The tree swayed and fell to one side. The cut was smooth and even. Chu Mu's body flashed. He did not seem to have done anything, but he appeared like a gust of wind in front of the tree trunk that had been cut down. He looked at it carefully, and when his finger gently brushed it, he could feel the remnants of the wind. 40% completion of the state of wind is the small success stage of the state of wind. Chu-Mu muttered to himself, using a voice that only he could hear. 39% completion of the state of wind is the entry stage of the state of wind. 40% completion of the state of wind is the small success stage. Although there is only a slight difference, there is a huge difference in the profoundness of the two. Just the power of the sword just now was enough to explain it clearly. Normally, when Chu-Mu had reached 30% completion of the state of wind, he would have to completely merge it into the kill of the clear wind to be able to release that sword attack. But now that his state of wind had reached 40% completion, his understanding of the profoundness of the wind was even more profound. Just by relying on his understanding of the wind, Chu-Mu could easily use the wind that was everywhere to perform an attack that was comparable to the kill of the clear wind that had been merged with 30% of the state of wind. This meant that without using any inner or outer sword aura, Chu-Mu would be able to perform an attack equivalent to a powerful middle-tier sword technique. Once 40% of the wind concept was merged into a sword technique, killing move or sword technique, the power would be extremely terrifying. Putting the sword back into the scabbard, Chu-Mu opened his palm. With a thought, the surrounding air suddenly surged. On his palm, a wisp of cyan appeared and spun, quickly turning into a cyan cyclone. It spun rapidly on his palm, making a slight whistling sound. With another thought, this cyan cyclone suddenly split into 2 smaller cyan cyclones. Then it split again, becoming 4 smaller cyan cyclones that lined up neatly. With a clench of his palm, the 4 small cyan cyclones suddenly exploded, turning into wisps of cyan that splashed in all directions. They seemed to merge into the air and disappear. Chu-Mu raised his head and looked into the distance. His eyes shone with an extremely sharp light that pierced through the void. He was full of confidence. At this moment, even if he were to fight with masters like the 4 heroes of the sword school, he would not be afraid. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 157. A soft and sharp xiao sound rang out. A pale green figure cut through the sky like a rainbow and flew past. In the blink of an eye, only the back of the figure was left as it swiftly disappeared into the distance. The faint traces left behind in the air slowly dissipated. Chu-Mu had used the fleeting gale movement technique to the extreme. His speed had exceeded the limit. The fleeting gale movement technique was originally a high-level movement technique, and it was also of the wind attribute. In terms of speed, other than the lightning and light attribute movement techniques, none of the other attributes could compare. In addition, Chu-Mu's wind concept had broken through and reached 40% completion. His full strength had been integrated into the fleeting gale movement technique, causing the speed of the fleeting gale movement technique to increase by several times, reaching a height that others could only look up to. Suddenly, the light green figure stopped and stood straight on the ground like a javelin. Because it stopped too quickly, the inertia caused a vast airflow to rush forward, causing the sand and rocks on the ground to roll and the fallen leaves to swirl in the air. When the airflow collided with the airflow in front of it, there were even bursts of explosive sound. The sound was shocking. With the wind concept reaching 40% completion, the wind trajectories formed by the airflow around him were even clearer in Chu-Mu's perception. This caused Chu-Mu to feel extremely refreshed. This kind of experience was truly unprecedented. Therefore, in addition to testing the strength of the attack, Chu-Mu also integrated 40% wind concept into the fleeting gale movement technique and the fleeting gale movement technique. The fleeting gale movement technique and the fleeting gale movement technique were both wind attribute movement techniques, but there was an obvious difference. One of them was a mid-level movement technique, while the other was a high-level movement technique. Moreover, the fleeting gale movement technique focused more on agility, displaying the agility of the wind to the extreme. It was suitable for teleportation within a small area, and not suitable for long-distance travel. On the other hand, the fleeting gale movement technique focused on the speed of the wind, displaying the speed to the extreme as much as possible. Relatively speaking, it was more suitable for long-distance travel. After experimenting, Chu Mu discovered that the fleeting gale movement technique under 40% wind concept had already reached the standard of a high-level movement technique. Moreover, he felt that as long as he spent some time calmly recalculating the fleeting gale movement technique, he would definitely be able to upgrade the fleeting gale movement technique to a high-level movement technique. On the other hand, the gale shadow movement technique under 40% wind concept increased his speed by a few times, and it was swift to the point of being inconceivable. Although my cultivation is still at the late 10th stage, my overall strength has obviously increased by a lot. Now, even if I use the simplified form of wind, I won't use up all of my sword energy. Moreover, because of my small success in concepts, my strength has increased once again. Even if I fight with Zhou Hongyu and the others, I shouldn't be at a disadvantage. Although Zhou Hongyu and the other 4 prodigies of the Sword Academy were all beginner Qi Transformation Realm swordsmen and had comprehended Intent Realm, Chu Mu deduced that it was impossible for their Intent Realm to reach the Minor Accomplishment Realm. The first dagger is in the space armlet. Next, we should focus on finding the second and third daggers, Chu Mu said to himself. With Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran's strength, they didn't have much of an advantage in the battle for the top 100. Therefore, the probability of snatching a fake sword was very low. Moreover, once they had a dagger, they wouldn't be able to hide the red light on it and would only cause more trouble for themselves. He wasn't a babysitter, but Luo Yufeng and the others were still good to him. They had a deep relationship with each other, so he would do something within his power. Chu Mu wouldn't refuse. His eyes narrowed slightly, and a faint blue light flowed in his eyes. Chu Mu looked around and searched carefully, but he didn't find the red light. His figure flashed, and he used the gale shadow again to escape into the distance. On the flat ground, there was a 1-meter-tall rock surrounded by a group of people. On the rock, there was a dagger that released a circle of red light. It was so bright that it attracted everyone's attention, making them unable to look away. They surrounded the rock. No, to be precise, they surrounded the dagger on the rock. From the looks of it, there were a total of 3 groups of people from different sword sects, and they all wanted this dagger. This dagger was found by our Flowing Cloud sword sect first. It's not your turn to get it. All of you back off. Otherwise, our daggers won't have eyes. A disciple from the Flowing Cloud sword sect coldly shouted, his face unyielding. Everyone has a share. Moreover, this dagger hasn't been found by you guys yet. How can you say that it belongs to your Flowing Cloud sword sect? I said it belongs to our 100-flower sword sect. You guys should back off quickly to avoid hurting our relationship. A female disciple from the 100-flower sword sect said with a smile. I think you guys should back off. This dagger has been taken by our fierce Gale sword sect. A male swordsman with a gloomy face said. His gaze was as sharp as a sword, slowly sweeping across the faces of the disciples from the Flowing Cloud sword sect and 100-flower sword sect. Seems like you guys are planning to make a move? The Flowing Cloud sword sect disciple's face sank. He gripped the hilt of his sword, and his voice became cold as his aura fluctuated. Let's make a move then. Let's see who's stronger and who'll get the dagger. The fierce Gale sword sect disciple didn't back down and said with a stern voice. If that's the case, then our 100-flower sword sect will back off. The female disciple from the 100-flower sword sect rolled her eyes and suddenly laughed. With a wave of her hand, the group of people retreated a dozen meters. It seemed like they really wanted to back off. The disciples from the Flowing Cloud sword sect and Fierce Gale sword sect, who were originally at loggerheads, suddenly stopped fighting. They looked at the people from the 100-flower sword sect together, their eyes filled with vigilance and traces of disdain. Your 100-flower sword sect really has a good plan. You waited for us to fight, then took the opportunity to snatch the dagger away. Dream on. The flowing cloud sword sect disciple coldly snorted. Although the fierce gale sword sect disciple didn't say anything, their expressions and eyes showed that. Don't worry. We won't take the opportunity to make a move. After her plan was seen through, the female disciple from the 100-flower sword sect smiled embarrassedly. However, the rolling of her eyes showed that she didn't feel embarrassed at all. The three sides were once again in a stalemate. Just when they felt that this stalemate wasn't going to work, a light blue figure flew over from the distance like a gust of wind. With a shio sound, it suddenly approached. Everyone had just noticed it, but before they could react, it swept past the rock and blew into the distance like a gust of wind. After 2 breaths of time, the disciples from the 3 middle-grade sword sects finally reacted. Damn it! That person snatched the dagger away. Bastard! How dare he snatch the dagger away from under our noses? Chase him. Catch him. I want him to know the consequences of snatching the dagger away in public. Furious roars rang out as the disciples of the Wandering Cloud sword sect and Penetrating Gale sword sect flew into a rage. They roared again and again as they utilized their movement techniques to swiftly dash forward. They swore to catch up to the figure that had seized the short sword and viciously punish him. Senior sister, let's chase him too. A disciple from the 100-flower sword sect hurriedly said, otherwise, the dagger will become someone else's. No, we don't want this dagger. The female disciple said, don't ask why. Think about it. With his speed, do you think we can catch up? Suddenly, the group of people became silent. Thinking back to that speed, it was as fast as lightning. It was impossible to catch up. They could only helplessly give up, but they were secretly guessing who that person was. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 158. The figures who were chasing after him stopped one by one because they had lost sight of their target. Damn it, who the hell is it? How dare he steal the dagger right under the noses of our 2 middle-grade sword sects? If I find out who he is, I won't let him go so easily. They cursed, but they were not as fast as him. Not only did they not catch up, but they also lost him. After the people of the Flowing Cloud sword sect and the Fierce Gale sword sect looked at each other, they all snorted and left separately. Like a gust of wind, Chu Mu suddenly appeared on the trunk of a tree. His clothes were fluttering, and there was a dagger in his hand that emitted a circle of eye-catching red light. The second dagger is in my hand, but I need another one. Staring at the dagger in his hand, Chu Mu's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a smile. With a thought, he put the dagger into his arms and put it into the space bracelet. The red light disappeared. Without any pretense, Chu Mu's body was as light as a feather, falling from the tree trunk. He landed a dozen meters away and lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot. Like a gust of wind, he was blown forward. Coo! Coo! A terrifying and somewhat strange roar sounded like a thunderclap, rumbling and shaking in all directions. The entire sky and earth seemed to shake and turn upside down in an instant. Chu Mu's body, which was running at high speed, also stopped in an instant. It felt like he was upside down. The trees not far away shook violently. The branches and leaves rustled as they swayed and collided with each other. Leaves spiraled and fell to the ground, covering the ground. The roar lasted for 10 breaths of time before it gradually weakened and finally disappeared. However, most of the swordsmen in the Dali Valley heard it within 10 breaths of time, and they all looked in the direction of the sound. Such a strange roar. What kind of beast is it? Chu Mu frowned slightly, and his eyes were full of thoughts. Immediately, he looked in the direction of the sound. It must be a very powerful beast. Maybe it has some treasure. His body flashed, and his speed increased. He turned around and flew out like a gust of wind. There was a swamp at the center of Dali Valley. The swamp was 1,000 meters wide, and there was a bare tree at the center of the swamp. There was not a single leaf on it. The tree was grayish-brown and protruded 5 meters out of the swamp. Many of its branches were protruding out of the swamp, making it look strange. However, what really attracted people's attention was not the shape of the tree, but the red glowing things on the tree. Silhouettes came from afar, stirring up gusts of wind. They all stopped in front of the swamp, and their gazes were immediately attracted by the few short swords on the withered tree in the middle of the swamp. Chu He, Su Jianfeng, Li Huayu, and Zhou Hongyu brought their respective forces and arrived one after another in the 4 directions of the swamp. The disciples of the other sword sects also arrived. 5 short swords. One of the swordsmen widened his eyes and gave an uncontrollable exclamation. The breathing of the others instantly became hurried. 5 short swords represented 5 spots. Even if they used them themselves, there would still be 4 spots left. They could give them to their fellow disciples and earn rewards from the sword sects for their contributions, or they could use them to make deals with other sword sects to earn benefits. Chumu arrived just in time as well. He stopped at the edge of the swamp and looked around. His gaze locked onto the 5 short swords on the withered tree in the middle of the swamp. The swamp was covered with withered branches and leaves. Occasionally, there would be some places where bubbles would pop up, releasing a sour and pungent smell. The short swords are mine. A disciple of a middle-grade sword sect, the Goshawk sword sect, shouted in a low voice. Soon after, his figure flashed, and like a goshawk, he flew forward. He instantly shot over 20 meters away. The tip of his foot gently tapped on a withered branch in the swamp, and he borrowed the force to fly up. He quickly made his way to the withered tree in the middle of the swamp. After borrowing the force a few times, this swordsman's superior movement technique was revealed. He had already crossed half the distance and would soon reach the withered tree to obtain the short swords. Suddenly, a black shadow flew out from the bottom of the swamp like a dolphin jumping out of the water. It was also like an arrow that was shot out. It opened its bloody mouth and bit at the swordsman in midair. It happened too fast. The swordsman's face was filled with shock. He was in midair, unable to borrow any force and was unable to react. His entire body was stiff. He was bitten and fell into the swamp. With a plop, he sank into the swamp and disappeared without a trace. Only the slightly rippling withered branches proved that it was not an illusion. Senior brother! The disciples of the Goshawk sword sect cried out in shock. Their faces were filled with grief and indignation. The faces of the disciples of the other sword sects changed drastically. They subconsciously took a few steps back, distancing themselves from the swamp. What was that? The voice asked with a hint of fear. A vicious beast, a type of vicious beast that I have never seen before. It was too fast. I couldn't even see what kind of vicious beast it was. One by one, they hurriedly retreated in fear of being attacked by the vicious beast. However, the swamp was dead silent. There was no movement at all. It was as if the terrifying vicious beast could not leave the swamp. Chu Mu narrowed his eyes and his pupils instantly contracted. Deshang's sword vision allowed his eyesight to surpass that of ordinary people. As such, he could clearly see the figure that suddenly jumped out from the swamp. It was a crocodile that was more than 5 meters long. It looked very strong and ferocious. When it opened its mouth, it revealed crisscrossing teeth that were extremely frightening. Most importantly, the crocodile's body was pitch black. The aura it released in an instant was filled with terrifying pressure. It was definitely above the various high-level vicious beasts that Chu Mu had encountered before. There was a huge difference. It felt like the difference between the realm of sword chi and the realm of chi transformation. There is actually a monster in the Dali Valley. Chu He and the other 3 were all shocked. Their pupils contracted rapidly. As experts of the chi transformation realm, not only did they surpass others in terms of cultivation, but they also surpassed others in terms of knowledge. As such, they were able to see the details of the figure that rushed out from the swamp at a glance. Monsters were tyrannical existences that were above vicious beasts. In a sense, monsters could be considered the evolved form of high-level vicious beasts. It was like the difference between the realm of sword chi and the realm of chi transformation. The weakest monster was at least at the beginning of the realm of chi transformation. I wonder how strong that monster is? Chu-He and the others secretly guessed. Everything happened in an instant, so they were unable to make an accurate judgment. I remember now. This monster seems to be confined within the swamp and is unable to leave. A look of realization flashed in Zhou Hongyu's eyes as he recalled what he had heard before. Could it be that only 95 people will be able to get a spot this year? Many people wondered. I don't believe that this vicious beast is really that powerful. Seeing that there was no movement from the swamp, someone finally could not take it anymore. The triangular-eyed youth took 2 steps forward and suddenly looked at Chu Mu. He rolled his eyes and smiled. Sir, let's work together. We can look after each other. Chu Mu also recognized him. He knew that this triangular-eyed youth's strength was not bad. 40% of the concept of wind filled Chu Mu with confidence. Even if that crocodile was truly a powerful existence that surpassed vicious beasts, Chu Mu was confident that he could escape even if he could not kill it. Most importantly, there were 5 short swords on the withered tree. Although he might not be able to take all 5, he could at least take one. All right. Chu Mu thought for a moment before agreeing. Good. I'll count to 3 and we'll use our movement skills together. The triangular-eyed youth smiled. 1, 2, 3. As soon as he finished speaking, the triangular-eyed youth immediately used his movement technique. His body moved and shot out like an arrow. His half-step chi transformation stage cultivation allowed him to shoot out 30 meters in an instant. His speed was unimaginable. Chu Mu's body moved at the same time. He was as light as a feather, like a gust of wind. Although it did not seem fast, it was not much slower than the triangular-eyed youth. Chu Mu and the triangular-eyed youth were 20 to 30 meters apart. They moved side by side toward the withered tree in the middle of the swamp. Everyone's gaze was focused on the 2 of them. Everyone's eyes were wide open and they almost held their breaths. Only the sound of their movement skills breaking through the air could be heard. Zhou Hongyu's gaze fell on Chu Mu and he narrowed his eyes. Zhou Hongyu was startled at first, but then he revealed a smile that was not a smile. Su Jianfeng and Li Huayu were also staring at Chu Mu. A flash of understanding appeared in their eyes. In the blink of an eye, Chu Mu and the triangular-eyed youth had already crossed more than half of the swamp. They were getting closer and closer to the withered tree. Everyone's hearts were in their mouths as they held their breaths and clenched their fists. That was because the person from before was about to be attacked. Chu Mu's entire body suddenly went cold, and he felt his hair stand on end. He was instantly locked onto by a terrifying and ferocious aura. His blood almost stopped flowing, his pores opened, and his scalp went numb. His skin emitted waves of numbness, and his muscles became stiff. The feeling of impending death was like an alarm bell. Sword force. His mind and soul trembled. Chu Mu didn't dare to hold back. In an instant, his sword force broke through the fierce aura that had locked onto him. It was as if he had broken free from his shackles. He used wind travel and his entire body was like a fairy in the wind as he drew an arc. At the same time, a huge black shadow shot out from below like an arrow. It opened its bloody mouth and fiercely bit down. The collision of its teeth was enough to make one's teeth ache and bones numb. Cries of surprise rang out, unable to hide the shock in their hearts. However, the black figure's fierce bite missed. Chu Mu's foot lightly tapped the crocodile's mouth after it had been bitten. Sword chi burst forth, and gale-passing shadow was used. With a shio sound, it flew out like a sharp arrow. With a plop, the crocodile once again fell into the swamp and disappeared. However, the feeling of danger did not disappear. It was as if someone was staring at him in the dark, making him feel uncomfortable. Chu Mu was already certain that the crocodile was definitely not a vicious beast. The aura that had locked onto him made his entire body stiffen. Even a vicious beast comparable to half-step chi transformation wouldn't be able to do that. If it wasn't a vicious beast and was so powerful, then it had to be a demonic beast that had surpassed vicious beasts. The word demonic beast entered his mind. Chu Mu's heart trembled and he once again increased his speed. As for the triangular-eyed youth, because Chu Mu's speed had decreased due to the attack, he was already a few dozen meters ahead. "Haha, 5 short swords, they're all mine." The triangular-eyed youth shone with incomparable joy. Although he had asked Chu Mu to move with him, it was only for peace of mind. He had absolutely no intention of giving away his short swords. The fat meat was about to be in his hands. When the time came, he would have made a great contribution to the Stormy Wave Sword School and would definitely be rewarded handsomely. Thinking of this, the triangular-eyed youth's face was flushed with excitement. Author's note: I recommend a friend's new book, Hunting Flower City. Those who like to read the city should read it. To be continued. If you like this book, you're welcome to come to Chidien.com to vote. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 159. Senior Brother Chu, those 5 short swords will belong to our Stormy Wave Sword School. The half-step chi transformation female swordsman beside Chu, he smiled. This time, our quota will definitely exceed the other sword schools. We will definitely receive more rewards from the royal family. The other half-step chi transformation swordsman was also overjoyed. Chu, he didn't say anything. His expression was very calm, but he had the same thought in his mind. The triangular-eyed youth finally crossed the swamp and landed on a branch of a withered tree. His body flashed as he reached for the nearest short sword. Just as he was about to grab the short sword, a gust of wind blew past him. His vision blurred and the short sword disappeared without a trace. He quickly looked up and saw a figure dancing in the wind like a fairy. He circled around the withered tree as if he was weightless and took all 5 short swords. What? Everyone was in an uproar. They didn't expect that the one to take the 5 short swords would not be the half-step chi transformation swordsman, but the late 10th phase. Sir, don't be too greedy. The triangular-eyed youth's face darkened. A trace of anger flashed through his eyes as he gripped the hilt of his sword with his right hand, ready to attack. Chu Mu stood on an even higher branch of the withered tree. He looked down at the triangular-eyed young man with an apathetic expression. 5 short swords were stuck at his waist, releasing 5 rings of red light. It made Chu Mu look like a large light bulb, abnormally conspicuous. You can keep 1 short sword for yourself. The other 4 should be given to me. The triangular-eyed youth slowly pulled out his sword and spoke slowly. His voice was powerful and full of vigor. Give it to you? Sure, but what will you give me in exchange? Chu Mu said unhurriedly. What did you say? Hearing Chu Mu's words, the triangular-eyed youth was overjoyed at first, but then his face darkened again. He felt like he had been played, which made him even angrier. He pointed his sword at Chu Mu and a sharp sword chi burst out, locking onto Chu Mu. Chu Mu only glanced at him, completely unaffected by his aura. His body flashed and turned into a gust of wind, leaving behind an afterimage as he shot out. Don't even think about escaping. The triangular-eyed young man shouted angrily and slashed out a few strands of sword chi. Then, he shot out in an earth-shattering manner and chased after them. Chu Mu's figure drew an arc in the air, and after dodging a few sword chi, he quickly descended downwards. His mind was highly concentrated in order to prevent the attack of that terrifying crocodile demon beast. The tip of his foot tapped on the dried branch, and his entire body floated up again. At the same time, the feeling of being locked on by the fierce and violent aura appeared again. Chu Mu hastily pulled out his sword and slashed downwards. Over 10 densely packed sword auras flew through the air and exploded on the swamp. The air currents surged, allowing Chu Mu to borrow the momentum to increase his speed. The black shadow flew out again, and the triangular-eyed young man happened to be flying over. In the blink of an eye, he was about to collide with the black shadow. His face changed greatly, and he hurriedly stabbed out with his sword, pointing it at the crocodile's body. The sharpness of the pseudo-sword could do nothing to the thick skin of the crocodile demon beast. The sword chi burst out, and the triangular-eyed young man hurriedly used the momentum to rush upwards. With a whistling sound, the triangular-eyed young man caught a glimpse of a black shadow lashing out like a long whip. The air exploded with a popping sound. Before he had time to react, he was hit. Immediately, he felt as if all the bones in his body had been shattered. An indescribable but extremely terrible pain spread throughout his body, seeping into his bone marrow and soul. His vision turned black, and he could only let out a short scream. His whole body flew out uncontrollably and fell into the swamp. With a bubbling sound, the triangular-eyed young man's body sank into the swamp bit by bit. His hands waved weakly, and finally, he completely sank into the swamp and disappeared. Chu Mu also took advantage of this opportunity to leap several times and return to his original place. His body emitted a strong red light, which was extremely dazzling. Therefore, when Chu Mu landed, the surrounding figures swayed and immediately formed an encirclement around Chu Mu. All of them looked unfriendly, and their eyes shone with sharpness and greed. Their gazes fell on the 5 short swords at Chu Mu's waist, and they slowly moved closer, shrinking the encirclement. Chu Mu was not afraid at all. He smiled and his body swayed. Everyone only saw a blur in front of their eyes, and some people felt a gust of wind blowing past them. When they looked carefully, they had already lost track of Chu Mu. A chuckle came from the side. "Do you think you can keep me here with your ability?" Everyone hurriedly looked back and saw that Chu Mu had appeared outside their encirclement. The red light on his body was still so dazzling. At this moment, Chu He and the other 4 heroes of the Sword Academy moved. They streaked across the sky and landed not far from Chu Mu, staring at Chu Mu. Being stared at by 4 Chi transformation swordsmen, Chu Mu's body tensed up. It was as if the air around him had been compressed and frozen. "This short sword is a thank you gift for helping me out that day." Chu Mu pulled out a short sword and transformed into a red light that shot towards Chu He as he spoke. Chu He grabbed it in his hand and didn't say anything. Chu Mu did not look at him again. Instead, he glanced at Su Jianfeng, Li Huayu, and Zhou Hongyu. "I still have 4 short swords. If you want to take them by force, I guarantee you won't get a single one. However, there is no enmity between us. I'll keep one for myself. If any of you want the other 3, give me something in exchange." "You've really exceeded my expectations." Zhou Hongyu's attitude was proud as he slowly said, "However, where is the short sword you obtained before? Hand over the short sword obediently. Otherwise you'll get it." Zhou Ziming threatened, using Chu He's power to intimidate others. "There's no need to digress. 3 short swords. Deal. The highest bidder wins," Chu Mu directly said, ignoring Zhou Ziming's clamor. "It's good to be confident, but it depends on who you're dealing with." Su Jianfeng spoke. His voice had a metallic quality to it, causing the pressure to multiply. "Looks like you don't need the short swords since you already have them." Chu Mu smiled slightly. "The 3 short swords are mine. I'll give you 2 high-grade sword arts and 1 top-grade yellow-level sword chi art." Li Huayu suddenly said. 1 top-grade yellow-level sword chi art, 1 low-grade sword, and 5 chi increasing pills. Chu He suddenly said. The price he offered was even more generous than Li Huayu's. "It's not a good habit to keep everything to yourself," Su Jianfeng suddenly said. He looked at Chu Mu. His narrow eyes carried a cold light that was as sharp as a sword, causing others to not dare to look at him directly. 1 short sword and 1 top-grade yellow-level sword chi art. Chu He, you've already obtained 1 short sword. There's no need for you to participate in the bidding for the remaining 3. He didn't say anything. However, from his expression, he really didn't have any intention of participating. An extra short sword would indeed give his sect 1 more spot, but 1 less spot wasn't a big deal. For a high-grade sword sect like theirs, there were quite a few people who entered the top 100 every year. More than half of them were from high-grade sword sects and provincial heirs. After Su Jianfeng finished speaking, he didn't care about what others said. He directly took out a silk booklet from his chest and threw it towards Chu Mu, landing in Chu Mu's hand. Chu Mu quickly flipped through it and confirmed that it was indeed a top-grade yellow-level sword chi art. He then took out a short sword and threw it towards Su Jianfeng. A high-grade sword art. Li Huayu's voice was somewhat cold. He also took out a silk booklet and threw it towards Chu Mu. After Chu Mu verified it, he took out a short sword and threw it towards Li Huayu. Now that you have a top-grade yellow-level sword chi art and a high-grade sword art, I'll give you 5 chi increasing pills. Zhou Hongyu suddenly laughed. His expression was still cold and arrogant. If you're willing to give up 2 short swords, I'll give you 12 chi increasing pills. Give me 5 chi increasing pills. Chu Mu said. Zhou Hongyu extended his left hand, and a subordinate beside him placed a porcelain bottle into his hand. With a shake of his hand, the bottle flew towards Chu Mu. Chu Mu opened it and poured it out. After confirming that there were indeed 5 chi increasing pills, he took out another short sword and threw it towards Zhou Hongyu. In this way, the number of short swords obtained by the 3 high-grade sword sects and the Crown Prince's courtyard was almost the same. However, this had always been the case, so there was nothing strange about it. A short sword, a high-grade sword art, a top-grade yellow-tier sword chi art, and 5 chi increasing pills. You have quite a lot of things on you. If I was still in the sword chi realm, I definitely wouldn't let you go, Su Jianfeng suddenly said before turning around and leaving with large strides. Chu Mu's expression didn't change, but his pupils slightly trembled. A trace of sharpness flashed through his eyes. Su Jianfeng's words instantly made Chu Mu the target of everyone. Looking at the surrounding sword sect disciples, they were all staring at him like hungry wolves. He looked deeply at Chu Mu. This unfamiliar cousin of his had made him sigh again and again. He looked around, but didn't say anything and turned around to leave. Li Huayu also looked at Chu Mu, as if he wanted to deepen his impression of him, and also left. Zhou Hongyu's arrogant expression revealed a hint of a smile. Looking at Chu Mu, he said, "You are a talent. I am starting to admire you. Join me, and from now on, listen to my orders. Not only will no one dare to touch you, but you will also get a better cultivation environment and more cultivation resources. No need. They are just a bunch of chickens and dogs," Chu Mu said indifferently, which immediately angered those who wanted to make a move on him. His figure flashed, and everyone's vision blurred. Chu Mu had turned into a gust of wind and quickly left. "Chase him, don't let him escape. I recognize him. He is the guy who stole our short sword." Some of the Flowing Cloud Sword Sect and Fierce Gale Sword Sect's disciples' eyes lit up and immediately shouted. A large group of people shouted and used their movement techniques to chase after Chu Mu. "Prince, are we just going to let him go like this?" Zhou Ziming gritted his teeth and said in an unwilling tone. He looked at the direction Chu Mu left with hatred. "There are some things that should not be asked," Zhou Hongyu said indifferently. He didn't scold him, nor did he get angry. However, it made Zhou Ziming shrink his neck and quickly retreat to the side, not daring to say anything. This person's movement technique is extraordinary. Even I have a feeling that I can't compare to him. He is truly a talent. I must take him under my wing and use him for my own purposes," Zhou Hongyu said secretly and made up his mind. He didn't know that his decision and plan would fail. As for the crocodile demonic beast in the swamp, it didn't leave the swamp, probably because it was restricted. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 160. Whoosh! The sharp ending sound was extremely long and harsh. It seemed to drill into everyone's ears, causing them to stop what they were doing and look up at the sky. They saw a ball of red emitting a dazzling light slowly rise into the sky and appear above the entire Dali Valley, dragging a long fiery red tail behind it. Bang! A huge sound rang out. It was earth-shattering. The entire cluster of dazzling red flames suddenly exploded. Like fireworks, countless tiny fiery red sparks flew out in arcs and fell in all directions. A signal flare? Is the battle for the top 100 over? Suddenly, one figure after another quickly rushed to the entrance of the valley. Chu Mu withdrew his gaze, and with a thought, he looked around to make sure there was no one around. He reached into his arms and a red light spread out. After he inserted the 3 short swords into his waist, he used his movement skill and quickly rushed to the entrance of the Dali Valley. Outside the valley, Ling Tsongyen and the 4 elders had all arrived. 4 elders, I'll have to trouble you. Ling Tsongyen smiled with his hands behind his back. The 4 elders nodded in unison. Then, another sword chi shot out and bombarded the boulder at the entrance of the valley. The sword chi penetrated into the boulder and activated. The boulder rolled and the entrance appeared again. The entrance has appeared. Let's go. With a few low shouts, the sword faction disciples who had already arrived at the entrance of the valley rushed out. When Chu Mu arrived, more than half of the people had already left the valley. Without stopping, Chu Mu blew through the entrance of the valley like a gust of wind and appeared outside. Because the red light on his body was too strong, it caused everyone's eyes to fall on him. 3 short swords. Whispers sounded. Ling Tsongyen and the 4 elders also looked at Chu Mu with some surprise. This kind of situation where one person obtained several short swords was very rare. Many of the sword faction disciples who did not manage to obtain a short sword had eyes that were as red as those of hungry wolves. They stared at the short sword at Chu Mu's waist, and their saliva nearly flowed out of their mouths. When Chu He and the other 4 prodigies saw the 3 rings of red light around Chu Mu, they were even more shocked and astonished. They had never imagined that Chu Mu would be able to obtain 3 short swords by himself. If they included the ones he had traded with them earlier, then he had obtained a total of 7 short swords. Junior brother. Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran also rushed out of the valley. Their line of sight was immediately attracted by Chu Mu. Then, they were startled, and their faces were full of astonishment. Eldest senior brother, 3rd senior brother. Chu Mu looked over and discovered that Luo Yufeng and Jing Xiuran's bodies didn't emit any red light. This meant that they didn't obtain any short swords. Moreover, they looked somewhat miserable. Good. Disciples, the battle for the top 100 in the Dali Valley is over. Ling Tsongyen stood on a boulder more than 3 meters high and looked down at the crowd. Originally, there were more than 400 people who entered the valley, but now there were less than 400 left. Among them, dozens had died in the valley. Without much emotion, his eyes paused slightly on each of the swordsmen who emitted red light. I would like to congratulate everyone who has obtained a short sword. You have the opportunity to obtain a place to study in the Great Koan Sword Mansion. However, this is not absolute. After a short pause, he let everyone's attention be more focused. Ling Tsongyen continued, when we return to the Sword Academy, we will have a final round of selection. Everyone who did not obtain a short sword will have a chance to challenge those who obtained a short sword. Everyone who obtained a short sword will also have a chance to be challenged. In addition, each person can only have 1 short sword. As for the extra short swords, I have 2 options for you to choose from. First, hand them over to me, and I will make the arrangements through challenges. Second, you can give them away. Now, let's return to the Sword Academy. On the way back, Chu Mu gave one short sword to Luo Yufeng and the other to Zheng Xiuran. These 2 short swords were originally intended for them. Little junior brother, I cannot thank you enough, Luo Yufeng said sincerely. Zheng Xiuran's face was also full of sincerity and excitement. Not long after, under the leadership of Ling Tsongyan, the disciples of the Sword faction returned to the Sword Academy and once again came to the Sword Battle Arena. A total of 100 disciples of the Sword faction who obtained a short sword stood on the Sword Battle Arena. The other disciples who did not obtain a short sword stood below the arena. The last round of challenges will begin with the 4 heroes of the Sword Academy. Does anyone want to challenge the 4 of them? Ling Tsongyan asked. Everyone was stunned. Challenge the 4 heroes of the Sword Academy? Who had nothing better to do. Challenging them was just asking to be humiliated. The 4 heroes of the Sword Academy left the Sword Battle Arena first and sat down in the audience seat. Then, Ling Tsongyan read out the names of the relevant disciples according to the Sword faction and asked if anyone wanted to challenge them. Generally speaking, those who could obtain a short sword had extraordinary cultivation and sword skills. They were very powerful. There were less than 100 half-step Qi transformation disciples who had entered the top 100. Aside from the 7 or 8 who had died, basically everyone had obtained a short sword. Soon, the half-step Qi transformation disciples of the 3 high-grade sword factions and the provincial heir's courtyard also appeared in the audience seats because no one wanted to challenge them. Next were the half-step Qi transformation disciples of the mid-grade sword faction. Some of the peak 10th stage disciples of the high-grade sword faction were even stronger than some of the half-step Qi transformation disciples of the low-grade sword faction. Therefore, a portion of the high-grade sword faction disciples who were confident in themselves challenged them. If there was one more person challenging the same target, one of the elders would draw lots to determine the challenger. If the challenger wanted to obtain a short sword, the person being challenged would naturally do their best to protect the short sword and would not retreat. The battles were very exciting, but in the end, the person being challenged would often win. Even if they won, they would often be injured. Fortunately, they would only be challenged once. Otherwise, if there was a second challenge, they would definitely lose. Among the 100 sword sect disciples who obtained the short sword, nearly 60 of them belonged to the 3 high-grade sword sects and the regional crown prince's courtyard. Of the remaining 40-something people, nearly 30 of them belonged to the 8 middle-grade sword sects, and the last 12 people belonged to the 36 low-grade sword sections. Although the low-grade sword factions made up the majority of the Sword Academy's cultivation sects with a total of 36, more than double the number of high-grade sword factions and mid-grade sword factions, there were far fewer true experts. Of the 12 low-rank sword sect disciples that obtained short swords, 3 of them were from the Azure Edge sword sect. In terms of cultivation, the one with the lowest cultivation was Chu Mu, followed by Zheng Xiuran. Behind them was Luo Yufeng and the other 9. They were all at the half-step Qi transformation stage and came from different low-rank sword sections. The eyes of the 10th stage peak disciples from the 3 high-grade sword factions, the provincial heir's courtyard, and the 8 mid-grade sword factions that hadn't yet been challenged lit up like light bulbs, causing Luo Yufeng and the others to be extremely vigilant. The challenges began with the half-step Qi transformation disciples. Luo Yufeng and the other 9 half-step Qi transformation disciples were challenged one after another. Each of them used 120% of their strength and even fought back with all their might without caring about their own injuries. No matter what, they had to protect their hard-earned spots. This was because this year was their last chance. If they couldn't enter the Great Kuan Sword Palace to cultivate, they wouldn't have another chance in the future. Based on this point, even if they had to pay the price of being seriously injured, they had to win. This kind of ruthlessness scared the challengers. After all, these challengers still had another chance. With this kind of luck in their hearts, they naturally wouldn't fight so hard. In the end, out of the 10 half-step Qi transformation cultivators, 8 of them successfully defended their spots. Luo Yufeng was one of them, but all of them paid a price. However, this price could be recovered after a period of recuperation. Next, it was Jing Xiuran's turn. Although he fought with all his might, he was still defeated in the end. The one who defeated him was a 10th stage peak disciple from a high-grade sword faction. Although his cultivation base wasn't inferior to his opponents, his sword Qi's purity and sword skills were inferior to his opponents. Junior brother, Jing Xiuran's pale face was filled with guilt. He looked a little uneasy and didn't dare to look at Chu Mu. He felt that the short sword was given to him by Chu Mu. It definitely wasn't easy for Chu Mu to obtain that short sword. But now, he couldn't protect the short sword and it was taken away by someone else. This made him feel extremely ashamed and ashamed to face Chu Mu. Third senior brother, you've already done your best. Chu Mu could clearly see that there was still a wound on Jing Xiuran's left arm that was dripping with blood. You still have one more chance. Cultivate well. Next time, both eldest senior brother and I believe that you will definitely obtain a spot. Jing Xiuran nodded vigorously. He took out a large hemostatic pill and crushed it to stop the bleeding. The last one to be challenged was Chu Mu. Although there were people who had seen Chu Mu's incomparably fast movement technique, there were also people who hadn't. Seeing that Chu Mu's cultivation base was only at the late 10th stage, they thought that maybe it was because of luck that he obtained the short sword. After the drawing of lots, a 10th stage peak disciple from the profound sword faction obtained the opportunity to challenge Chu Mu. Brat, obediently hand over the short sword to avoid injury. The challenger sneered. Chu Mu slightly shook his head and didn't answer. He pulled out his sword and slashed out. A strong wind blew through the forest. It was incomparably strong and mighty. Break for me. The challenger's eyes widened. His face was dignified. He held the fake sword with both hands and used a high-level sword skill. From top to bottom, it was as if he could split a mountain. A 3-meter-long golden sword Qi condensed and slashed down. It was as if it wanted to split the space in front of it. The violent collision caused countless sword Qi to explode and shoot out in all directions. In the midst of the chaos, a cold ripple spread through the void. Following that, the challenger only felt a burst of coldness coming from his throat. The tip of Chu Mu's sword was fixed on the challenger's throat. The terrifying sharpness caused the skin on his throat to open up. His face was filled with shock. His pupils dilated, and his head slightly tilted back as he stared at Chu Mu in a daze. Good, the last round of challenges is over. Now, Elder Min will announce the top 100. Ling Tsongyen said in a clear voice. One of the elders walked to the center of the arena and loudly announced, "This year's top 100 contestants are Chu He, Su Jianfeng, Li Huayu, Zhou Hongyu." Chu Mu sheathed his sword and walked to the side. The challenger's face changed back and forth. Feeling ashamed, he turned around and left. In the entire arena, only Elder Min's voice still sounded. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 161. The annual battle for the top 100 had come to an end. The 3 top-grade sword sects, the regional crown prince court, and the 8 middle-grade sword sects all had many disciples who had been selected. However, the 36 lower-grade sword sects had a total of 9 disciples who had been selected from the 8 lower-grade sword sections. The sword sects that had not been selected were naturally a little depressed, especially those who had participated in the top 100 for the last time. They were very sad because they would have to leave the Sword Academy and return to their respective sword sections. They would no longer have the opportunity to enter the Great Kuan Sword Palace. In the courtyards of the 8 lower-grade sword sects, there was a joyous atmosphere. Could be said that some were happy and some were sad. Ha ha ha, that's great. This time, our sword sect has 2 people entering the top 100. This has never happened before since the establishment of our sect. Within the Qingfeng courtyard, all the senior and junior brothers were overjoyed and overjoyed. In their memory, since the establishment of the Qingfeng sword sect, only one person had entered the top 100 and entered the Great Kuan Sword Palace to cultivate. At that time, the Qingfeng sword sect had received a reward from the Great Kuan royal family and received a lot of good things, gradually catching up with the Qinglan sword sect. This time, there were 2 people who had entered the top 100. They would definitely receive more rewards. Even the disciples of the Sword Academy would receive rewards from the Sword Academy. It was a joyous occasion. Just as the 8 senior and junior brothers of the Qingfeng courtyard were overjoyed, someone arrived and explained the purpose of his visit. Chu Mu left the Qingfeng courtyard and went to where the deputy headmaster was. The deputy headmaster had summoned him. The deputy headmaster. It's Ling Tsangyan, right? Why did he summon me? Chu Mu thought to himself as he followed the person. Not long after, Chu Mu entered a huge courtyard. In the backyard, there was a pond and a pavilion at the edge of the pond. In the pavilion, an old man sat. It was the deputy headmaster, Ling Tsangyan. You're here. Ling Tsangyan poured a cup of tea and flicked the teacup out of his hand. Chu Mu stretched out his hand and the teacup landed between his fingers. The tea was still as if it had been frozen. Have a cup of tea first and sit down. Thank you, deputy headmaster, Chu Mu said as he walked into the pavilion and put down the teacup. Ling Tsangyan smiled faintly. Are you guessing why this old master summoned you? That day, I saw the fight between you and the 6 in-service disciples of the Sword Academy in the bamboo forest 20 kilometers west of the academy. When Chu Mu heard this, his muscles tensed up and his pupils constricted. He had the urge to turn around and leave immediately. Don't be nervous. I have no intention of pursuing the matter. Besides, if I do, even if you have the cultivation of the Qi transformation stage, you can forget about escaping from me. Ling Tsangyan stared at Chu Mu with an unfathomable smile on his face. He slowly said, However, when I saw you attack that night, your attacks were swift and forceful. Your sword techniques were extraordinary, and you even grasped 20% of the concept of cloud. What made me even more surprised was that your cultivation was only at the late 10th phase. Such talent has already surpassed the current 4 heroes of the Sword Academy and is worthy of my attention. When Chu Mu heard this, he relaxed a little and was even more surprised. He had long guessed that the deputy headmaster's cultivation must be higher than the Qi transformation stage. Now, listening to his words, Chu Mu was even more certain of his guess. He just didn't know what was after the Qi transformation stage. Perhaps the elders of the Azure Edge sword sect knew this, but Chu Mu didn't think so much at that time and didn't ask. Now that he thought of this, he had no way of knowing and could only guess secretly. I summoned you this time to congratulate you on entering the top 100 and obtaining the opportunity to study in the Great Kuan Sword Mansion. Ling Tsangyan didn't care about Chu Mu's reaction and continued, Secondly, I wanted to get in touch with you first and leave a good impression. As soon as these words came out, Chu Mu was even more puzzled. As the deputy headmaster of the Li Province Sword Academy, Ling Tsangyan's cultivation was naturally profound and his swordsmanship was extraordinary. Could it be that he treated Chu Mu differently because he saw Chu Mu's swordsmanship and 20% of the essence of clouds? What kind of inside story was behind this? Chu Mu didn't know, and it seemed that the deputy headmaster didn't intend to explain it clearly. Sit down. There are some things that you don't need to know now, but I absolutely have no malice towards you. Ling Tsangyan's attitude was gentle and he said slowly, If you have any questions, whether it is about cultivation or other aspects, you can ask. If I know, I will definitely answer your questions. After thinking for a while, Chu Mu opened his mouth and asked Ling Tsangyan for advice. Although I don't know the real purpose of the deputy headmaster summoning me, I don't know. But at least I can be sure that he has no malice towards me." After leaving the deputy headmaster's courtyard, Chu Mu said to himself as he walked towards the Qingfeng courtyard. In the conversation with Ling Tsangyan, some of Chu Mu's questions were answered. For example, what was the realm after the Qi transformation realm? For example, what were the grades of the sword sects based on, etc.? After the Qi transformation realm was the Qi Si realm. As for what the Qi Si realm was, Ling Tsangyan didn't say much. He only told Chu Mu that when he was able to break through the Qi Si realm one day, he would naturally understand the mystery. As for after the Qi Hai realm, it was called the Ninth Transformation Realm, and after the Ninth Transformation Realm, it was called the Origin Realm. After the Origin Realm, from what Ling Tsangyan had said, it seemed that there were even higher realms, but he did not explain further. Just these few realms were enough to make Chu Mu stunned and extremely shocked. Once again, he was shocked by the vast world of swordsmen. At the same time, it aroused Chu Mu's greater interest and a strong desire to explore. His eyes also became unprecedentedly sharp and firm. When Chu Mu asked Ling Tsangyan whether his cultivation was at the Qi Si realm, Ling Tsangyan just smiled and didn't answer directly. As for the grades of the sword sects, Chu Mu thought of the oath he made that day. Within 10 years, he would challenge the Qinglan sword sect. This oath was a kind of motivation for himself, but Chu Mu also needed to have a clearer understanding of the Qinglan sword sect. At the same time, this kind of question also gave him a general understanding of the other sword sections. Low-grade sword sects need at least 10 Qi transformation realm swordsmen, and 1 Qi Si realm swordsman. Mid-grade sword sects need at least 10 Qi Si realm swordsmen, and 1 Ninth transformation realm swordsman. As for high-grade sword sects, they need at least 10 Ninth transformation realm swordsmen, and 1 origin realm swordsman. No wonder it's said that it's easy for mid-grade sword sects to destroy low-grade sword sections. When Chu Mu first learned of this, he was almost stunned. This was already beyond his imagination and knowledge as a sword Qi realm swordsman. Even if he was in the sword master realm, he still couldn't calm down. It took nearly half a minute for Chu Mu to calm down and slowly digest the information he received. What he didn't know was that he regained his composure in half a minute, which surprised Ling Tsangyan again. This kind of temperament was definitely not something a sword Qi realm swordsman could achieve. Even a Qi transformation realm swordsman couldn't compare. In the conversation with Ling Tsangyan, Chu Mu himself didn't know that Ling Tsangyan had a more complete understanding of Chu Mu's temperament. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 162. Little junior brother, you're back. Why did the deputy headmaster summon you? Zhou Jin asked curiously. Nothing, just chatting. Chu Mu smiled. Well, don't ask so many questions, Luo Yufeng said. He was still in a very good mood. This was his last chance to participate in the top 100 competition. Because of Chu Mu, he had obtained a place. We have to work harder and strive to participate in next year's top 100 competition and obtain a place in the top 100. Yuan Wenhua clenched his fists and said loudly. I still have one more chance. Jing Xiu Ran's face was also full of determination. According to the experience of this year's top 100 competition, it's best if the other senior brothers can enter together next year. Only by working together will we have a better chance. If we're alone, even if we obtain a short sword, it will be snatched away and our lives will be in danger. Chu Mu said with a thoughtful look in his eyes. I think that by next year, second senior brother and third senior brother should be able to enter the top 100 competition. As for us, it's hard to say. Li pondered and said slowly. Haha, don't worry. This time, little junior brother and I of our Qingfeng Academy obtained a place in the top 100. You will all be rewarded by the Sword Academy. As long as you cultivate well this year, it's not impossible for you to enter the top 100 competition. Luo Yufeng smiled. I'm going to cultivate. Jing Xiuran stood up and strode out of the hall. This time, he obtained a short sword, but in the end it was snatched away by others because of the last challenge. This made Jing Xiuran feel ashamed, but at the same time, he held his breath and swore that he must obtain a short sword in the next top 100 competition. I'm going to cultivate too. All of you go and cultivate. In the blink of an eye, 5 days passed. Every day, Chu Mu cultivated according to his usual schedule. His upper origin sword chi was getting thicker and thicker, and he was not far from the peak of 10th stage. On this day, the Sword Academy's reward was also issued, and Luo Yufeng personally received it. The Sword Academy's reward this time is really generous. Luo Yufeng came back with a big bag. As soon as he entered the Qingfeng courtyard, he shouted loudly. He was very excited, very different from his usual calmness. Eldest senior brother, quickly take it out. What exactly did the Sword Academy reward? Zhou Jin shouted somewhat impatiently. A group of people surrounded him. Come, let's go to the hall, Luo Yufeng said and quickly went to the hall. He placed the bundle on the table and opened it. Inside there were 3 different colored porcelain bottles. There were dozens of them in total. In addition, there were 6 books. This is the Great Hemostasis Pill. This is the Great Qi Recovery Pill. And this is the Qi Boosting Pill. Haha, this is great, there are actually so many Qi Boosting Pills. There are 3 top-grade yellow-rank sword Qi arts, and there are also 3 complete high-grade sword arts. Ha 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 ha, all of them were extremely excited. Even Chu Mu found it difficult to remain calm. His heart was in turmoil. After counting, there were a total of 16 bottles of Great Hemostasis Pill and 16 bottles of Great Qi Recovery Pill. Each bottle contained 10 pills, adding up to a total of 320 pills. There were 8 bottles of Qi Boosting Pills. Each bottle also contained 10 pills, adding up to a total of 80 pills. The 3 top-grade yellow-rank sword Qi arts were of the fire, wood, and lightning attributes, and the 3 high-grade sword arts corresponded to the fire, wood, and lightning attribute. Chu Mu flipped through them. The 3 top-grade yellow-rank sword Qi arts were not comparable to the Shangyuan sword Qi art, but they were only slightly inferior. As for the 3 high-grade sword arts, they were relatively ordinary and could not be compared to the gold-tip sword art. However, to the others this was a great gift. It was enough to increase their overall strength by a lot. Previously, Chu Mu had used the short sword to exchange for a top-grade yellow-rank sword Qi art and a high-grade sword art. They were both of the cloud attribute. It was very coincidental. Second junior brother majored in the gold attribute. Unfortunately, there is no gold attribute among these sword Qi arts. Luo Yufeng sorted out the items. After glancing at the others, he said, Third junior brother majored in the fire attribute, so you can switch to this fire sword Qi art and this high-grade sword art. Fourth junior brother majored in the cloud attribute, which is also lacking here. Fifth junior brother majored in the gold attribute, while 6th junior brother majored in the thunder attribute, so there is a thunder sword Qi art and high-grade sword art. 7th junior brother majored in the wood attribute, so there is a corresponding wood sword Qi art and high-grade sword art. I believe that if all of you switch to these sword Qi arts and sword arts, and with the supply of these Qi boosting pills, your strength will definitely increase a lot in the future. At that time, it will not be difficult to get a place in the top 100 next time, Luo Yufeng said. Zhou Jin, Li Yi, and Yuan Wenhua couldn't help but feel a little sad. Although they were happy for their fellow disciples, they didn't have the relevant sword Qi arts and sword arts to cultivate, so their strength in the next year wouldn't be that obvious. I have a cloud attribute yellow class sword Qi art and high-grade sword art. Fourth senior brother, you can make a copy and cultivate, Chu Mu said, taking out 2 books from his chest and putting them on the table. Li Yi's eyes suddenly lit up, and he looked at Chu Mu with gratitude. Also, second senior brother and fifth senior brother, although I do not have a gold attribute sword chi art, I have a powerful gold attribute sword art. It is more powerful than the high-grade sword arts here, and it is called the Golden Edge Sword Art. You can make a copy and cultivate it. Chu Mu said again. Zhou Jin and Yuan Wenhua's eyes suddenly lit up. Golden Edge Sword Art. Junior brother, is that the one you are cultivating? Yuan Wenhua asked eagerly. Yes. Chu Mu nodded. Haha, that's great. Second senior brother and I can also ask you for advice. Yuan Wenhua laughed, and the depression in his heart was swept away. Although they did not have a gold attribute yellow class sword chi art, if someone taught them the gold attribute sword art, their cultivation progress would be faster, and they would have a deeper understanding of it. Naturally, their strength would also improve significantly. Little junior brother, we will have to trouble you in the future. Zhou Jin also smiled. Chu Mu nodded his head. He had already trained the golden edge sword technique to perfection. Instructing them was a piece of cake. Moreover, the reason why he said all this was because he wanted to raise the strength of his senior brothers as much as possible. In the following time, everyone chose the sword chi art and sword art they wanted to cultivate, and began a new round of cultivation frenzy. A few days later, everyone finished cultivating the sword chi art. Except for Zhou Jin, Yuan Wenhua, Chu Mu, and Luo Yufeng, everyone else's sword chi had become much purer, and their overall strength had increased. Zhou Jin and Yuan Wenhua had already started cultivating the golden edge sword art. Under Chu Mu's guidance, they had basically grasped the basic form of the golden edge sword art, and gradually became proficient. During this time, Chu Tian and Chu Hong also came. They also received some rewards, but the power to distribute the rewards fell into the hands of the sword faction's eldest senior brother, so they received very little rewards. From them, Chu Mu also learned that the rewards received by the other sword faction's courtyards were not the same as Qingfeng courtyards. For example, the courtyards of the other low-grade sword sects only received one top-grade yellow-level sword chi technique and one high-grade sword art in addition to medicinal pills. As for the mid-grade sword sects, they only received 3 or 4 top-grade yellow-level sword chi techniques and high-grade sword art. Chu Mu silently pondered for a moment. Perhaps this had something to do with Vice Academy Master Ling Songyan. Perhaps it was because of him that he gave Qingfeng Academy some extra benefits. Secretly remembering this, Chu Mu did not go to thank Ling Songyan. After all, Ling Songyan did not say anything. In the blink of an eye, another 10 days passed. Chu Mu's upper origin sword chi had become purer and denser. He was only one step away from the peak of 10th stage. In addition, Chu Mu had also reached the completion of the Golden Edge Sword Art, Cloud-Shattering Sword Explosion, and Gale Sword Art. In addition to taking some time out every day to review, he also touched on several other superior grade sword art. In a short time, he had cultivated the fire, thunder, wood, and cloud sword arts to the beginner level. Now that Chu Mu's horizons had been broadened, and after a conversation with Ling Songyan, he understood that the world of swordsmen was infinitely vast. Naturally, he paid less attention to superior grade sword art. Now, if it was not a powerful superior grade sword art, it would not be able to attract Chu Mu's attention. However, powerful superior grade sword arts were difficult to obtain. Chu Mu only had the Golden Edge sword art. Therefore, although the other superior grade sword arts were relatively ordinary, Chu Mu still cultivated them to increase his knowledge and accumulation in swordsmanship. When facing an enemy, he mainly used the Golden Edge sword art, Cloud-Shattering Sword Explosion, and Gale sword art. Although the Gale sword art was relatively ordinary, it contained 40% wind essence. Integrating it into the Gale sword art was enough to increase the power of the Gale sword art by 4 times, surpassing the power of the Golden Edge sword art. Time passed little by little. In the blink of an eye, another 10 days had passed. Chu Mu, who was in the middle of cultivation, finished channeling the sword qi. He opened his eyes and a ray of light shot out. He opened his mouth slightly and the turbid qi condensed into a sword and spat out. It pierced through the air for more than 3 meters before dissipating. Feeling the abundant sword qi in his dantian, Chu Mu smiled. Finally, his sword qi cultivation had broken through to the peak of 10th stage. His overall strength had increased again. If it's like last time and I'm chased by an ordinary qi transformation realm swordsman, I'll be able to kill him by myself, Chu Mu thought to himself. While Chu Mu had improved, Luo Yufeng and the others had also improved. Luo Yufeng, who was half a step into the qi transformation realm, had a sword aura that was even purer and denser. The others, on the other hand, had clearly improved because of the qi increasing pill. Originally, they had obtained 10 qi increasing pills from defeating Song Guangtao. Afterwards, they had obtained 80 qi increasing pills from the Sword Academy. On average, each person had obtained at least 10 qi increasing pills. If they completely digested the 10 qi increasing pills, they could go from early 10th stage to late 10th stage, and from mid-10th stage to peak 10th stage. After deducting the qi increasing pills and the ones he had given to Chu Mu, as well as the qi increasing pills he had obtained in the top 100, Chu Mu still had 12 qi increasing pills in his spatial bracelet. 2 days later, someone came to inform him that the top 100 had one chance to leave. They could return to their families or sword sections. 3 months later, they had to return to the Sword Academy. After Chu Mu and Luo Yufeng tidied up, they bade farewell to their fellow disciples and left the Sword Academy on their way back. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation.